You're just bitter because mom finally found a real man. That's what Tyler said. Not screamed, not spat out in teenage defiance, just tossed it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. One leg propped on the coffee table I built with my own damn hands, PlayStation controller in one hand, half a protein bar in the other. I looked up from the Sunday paper, slow and deliberate. Let the words marinate. He didn't even glance up. Ron's taking me to the driving range this weekend, he added, chewing with his mouth open. He says I've got a natural swing. You never even tried with me. That's when I knew I was done. Not because of the insult itself. I've worked construction for 40 years. I've been called worse by people in safety vests and courtrooms. But because I recognized the tone, that effortless arrogance, the kind you don't get on your own, the kind you inherit from your mother, or the guy now grinning in her Facebook selfies like he just won a prize out of a Cracker Jack box. I folded the paper slowly, let it rest on the coffee table. I looked around the room, oak flooring I refinished after Denise wanted it, less country, the bookshelf I built to fit her grandmother's antique vase. The family portrait I'd paid $1,000 to have professionally taken because Tyler hated his teeth and Denise said she needed Photoshop. All of it mine. All of it earned. All of it now housing a stranger. I stood up. Tyler finally looked at me, like maybe he sensed something in my movement. Some shift. I didn't yell. I didn't frown. I just nodded. All right, I said. I understand. He blinked. Wait, understand what? I didn't answer. Just walked past him, down the hall, into the guest room closet, reached up into the crawl space where the safe was tucked behind a pile of outdated Christmas decorations and a cracked humidifier. Combination dial turned slow, 38-14-07. Click. Inside, a folder. Thick, pristine, labeled with a single word in bold Sharpie contingencies. Funny thing, Denise always thought I was paranoid. Why do you keep records like some prepo accountant? She'd laugh. Because I've seen scaffolding fail. Beams crack. People too. You don't build a house without planning for the storm. Inside the folder. Title deed to the house, signed and notarized under my name only. College fund account info, set up under my LLC's discretionary clause, meaning I could revoke it at any time. Banking log showing every dollar I ever transferred, noted and timestamped. A separate lease agreement for a modest 2-bedroom apartment I'd been keeping for years, just in case. I hadn't opened that file in nearly 6 years. I dusted it off, sat at the desk in the corner, fired up my old Dell laptop, logged into the college fund portal. I didn't pull the plug yet, just looked at the balance, $82,004.33. For Tyler, for the boy I raised since he was 5, who once called me dad during a flu-ridden nightmare, who now thought my job, my presence, my very usefulness had expired like a carton of milk. Denise was at her sister's that weekend. Wine and gossip and me time before her next business seminar in Scottsdale. I didn't bother calling her. I spent the rest of that night in silence, reading over every document like I was preparing for a court date with God. I didn't feel angry. Not really. It was worse. I felt done. There's something terrifying about a man who no longer needs to be understood. By 3 a.m., I'd lined up a call with my lawyer for Monday morning. I drafted 2 emails, one to my financial advisor, the other to a moving company I'd used once before when Denise and I took a break. And then I sat in that chair and watched the sun crawl up through the blinds. The house was so quiet, you could hear the clock tick. The same one Tyler threw across the garage once because I wouldn't let him take the car out at midnight. Tick, tick, tick. Each one a nail in the coffin of my patience. I stood, folded the file, packed it into my old military duffel, went back to the living room. Tyler was still passed out on the couch, mouth open, phone slipping from his hand. I didn't bother saying goodbye. When I closed that front door behind me, I didn't just leave the house. I left a version of myself inside, when I had no intention of dragging into whatever came next. The hallway was still dark when I zipped up the duffel bag. No creaks from upstairs. Tyler was out cold, probably dreaming of Ron teaching him how to hold a driver while bragging about stock options that didn't exist. I paused at the top of the stairs, not for sentiment, just making sure I didn't forget anything. My watch, my passport, the folder. I'd made the apartment lease 3 years ago during a rough patch with Denise. She thought we were redefining boundaries. I thought we were circling the drain. Never moved in, Just paid the rent quietly and kept the keys on my keychain behind the one labeled shed. She never noticed. The drive took 22 minutes. Every traffic light green, like God wanted me gone too. The apartment was small, carpeted, not stylish, not cozy, functional. One window, a couch I'd picked up from an estate sale, and a bed I'd slept on maybe twice. It still smelled like cardboard and old Windex. I stood in the center of the living room, dropped my bag, and exhaled like I'd just stepped off a battlefield. I didn't feel like a man abandoning his home. I felt like a man finally leaving someone else's. By 8 a.m., I was logged into the county recorder's system. The house, technically, had always been under my name. When Denise and I got divorced the first time, long story, I never added her back on. She never asked. She just assumed. Most people do. The LLC I used to transfer the title? Clark Reed Holdings. Dormant, quiet, no activity for 7 years. Just sitting there with a clean EIN and no debt. In 15 minutes, the deed was recorded under its name. Our family home, Denise's kingdom, was now a sterile asset owned by a faceless corporation. The next tab I opened, Tyler's 529 College Fund. I stared at the account for a full minute. I knew what I was about to do wasn't just cold, it was surgical. I clicked Pause Monthly Contributions, then clicked Begin Escrow Transfer. It asked for a reason. I typed Beneficiary Reassessment Pending. That's lawyer speak for you burned the bridge, kid. Hope Ron's got his checkbook. My phone buzzed around noon. Denise. Caller ID. Denise. Home. Not ex-wife. I left it ringing. She called again. This time I picked up. Harold? Where the hell are you? I could hear clinking glasses in the background. Probably at brunch with her sister, ordering something with Prosecco and pretending she wasn't worried. You forget your meds? She said. Or just having a senior moment? I waited. Let the silence stretch until she got uncomfortable. No, I finally said. I just remembered who I am. Click. No shouting. No begging. Just that. By evening, I was sitting across from David Jerson, my lawyer of 20 years. Old school guy, suspenders and all. Jewish grandfather energy with a courtroom mean streak. I handed him the folder. He flipped through, whistled softly. Been a long time since I saw you this prepared. She finally got the son to say it, I replied. He didn't ask what. He just nodded and opened a drawer. All right, let's make this clean and ugly. We drafted 3 letters that night. One to the registrar of Tyler's school notifying them of potential revocation of financial support due to change in legal guardianship status. One to Denise, and signed but ready, spelling out the structure of the house transfer and her 0 ownership stake. One to Ron, just a name and an address I scribbled down with a sticky note that read, You want the throne? Here's the crown. Good luck, pal. As David typed, I leaned back and stared out the window. My view? A parking lot and a dumpster. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt peace. Not because I was free, not because I was vengeful, but because I had finally decided to stop bleeding for people who brought knives to dinner. The photo hit my inbox at 6:42 p.m. No subject line, no message, just an image. Tyler, in a borrowed sports jacket, grinning like he'd just been knighted. Ron, next to him, oversized Rolex creeping out from under a linen cuff. They were seated at some overpriced steakhouse, the kind that charges $90 for a ribeye and $25 for artisanal water. Behind them, like a trophy on wheels, Ron's black Porsche 911 gleamed under parking lot lights. Probably rented. Maybe leased. Definitely not earned. Caption, Real men handle things. I stared at it for a moment. Not out of pain. Out of awe. The kind of awe you feel watching a raccoon figure out how to open a trash can lid. There was something so theatrical in the whole display, Tyler with that smug, premature confidence of a boy who thinks the rules of adulthood are written in horsepower and cocktails. And Ron, smiling like a man who just convinced himself he hadn't walked into a trap. Denise must have taken the photo. Maybe she even told them to pose that way. Maybe she thought it would sting. What it did, actually, was settle me. I didn't need to reply. I didn't need to engage. That message, sent like some middle-aged, lipstick-smeared war banner, only confirmed what I already knew. None of them thought I would act. They thought I was bluffing. But the only thing more dangerous than a man with nothing left to lose is a man who already let go. I logged into the Education Trust platform. It took 11 seconds. Click. Login. Multi-factor authentication. Open Tyler's portfolio. Balance, $82,004.33. The number sat there like a final favor waiting to be burned. One more click. Reassign beneficiary/enter escrow. A warning popped up. Are you sure? This cannot be reversed without legal proceedings. I clicked yes. Then typed, transfer to holding until further instructions. Beneficiary review in process. Done. Just like that, a future was paused. Not deleted. Not destroyed. Just suspended. He would still get into college. Maybe. But someone would have to actually pay for it now. Someone would have to step in, make the phone calls, move the money, write the checks. Let's see if real man Ron was willing to co-sign student loans at 7% interest. I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of scotch. Something old. Something peaty. Something Tyler once spat out and said, tastes like burnt wood and regret. Fitting. My phone buzzed again, another message from Denise. This one had a gif. Tyler and Ron laughing. Text overlay. Good luck catching up. Harold winking face. They thought they were in a race. They didn't realize I'd already finished it and sold the track. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the folder again. Removed the last item, an envelope marked, hold until escrow confirmed. Inside, a letter to the school board. A list of contributions I'd made over the years. A proposal for a merit-based scholarship fund under my name for children of blue-collar workers in our district. The kind of kids who didn't call the man who raised them obsolete because someone flashier bought a bottle of mid-shelf Cabernet. The fund would be seeded from Tyler's former account. Fully legal. Fully notarized. Fully mine. The money wouldn't vanish. It would just skip a generation. Tyler wasn't the first to mistake silence for weakness. He wouldn't be the last to learn how wrong that assumption could be. Denise had just finished a mimosa and half a salmon tartine when her phone rang. Private school area code. She rolled her eyes, assuming it was another donation drive. She answered on speaker, expecting to nod through another pitch for a digital smartboard fund. Instead, the voice on the other end was tight, professional, but unmistakably strained. Mrs. Chandler, this is Susan from the billing office at Westwood Academy. We're calling to confirm. Denise interrupted. Yes, the tuition's paid. It always is. Just check with Harold. That's the issue, Susan said, cutting in with the kind of voice people use when they don't want to say the thing they're about to say. The payment for Tyler's spring term bounced this morning. Twice. And the attached college trust for future tuition was flagged as frozen in our system. Denise blinked. Her fork paused midair. That's not possible. There must be a mistake. We've double-checked. The trust fund account ending in 7193 is under review. We were instructed not to process any withdrawals until further notice. We were hoping you could clarify. Denise faked a polite chuckle. Must be a glitch. I'll get back to you. She hung up and immediately dialed Harold. Number disconnected. No voicemail. No forwarding. Just a robotic tone that said, this person no longer exists in your ecosystem. She stared at the phone, heart ticking faster now. Tried again. Nothing. She opened their old text thread, blank. He had deleted their entire history. Gone. She scrolled up anyway, desperate for something familiar. The last message was from 2 days ago, sent by her. Guess who's eating Wagyu with a real man tonight? Face-blowing kiss. No reply. Not even a read receipt. That night, she confronted Ron at dinner. Tyler was too busy on his phone to notice the tension, bragging about how his swing had impressed the club coach. He froze the college fund, she snapped under her breath. The payment bounced. Ron cut into his fillet, unfazed. So call him. Fix it. I did. His number's dead. You said he'd just pay. Like always. Ron shrugged, wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin like they were discussing a parking ticket. I thought he would. But maybe he got tired of being the family wallet. Denise's wine tasted suddenly metallic. She went home, pulled out the thick accordion folder she kept all the official things in: birth certificates, school records, old tax returns. No sign of the trust documentation. It had always been Harold's domain. He handled the logistics, the transfers. She remembered laughing once, wine-drunk, saying, "Thank God you're the boring one in the relationship." Now she ripped through drawers. Nothing. She opened her email. searched for anything with the word trust. There, an old email from Harold's lawyer, David Jerson, dated 2 years ago. As discussed, the trust structure has been formalized under your sole discretion. Denise Chandler does not appear on any ownership or trustee lines. She remembered scoffing at the time. Of course he put it all under his name. Classic Harold. She also remembered not caring. She was too busy planning her girls' trip to Mexico. Now, her stomach dropped into her knees. She fired off a panicked email to David. It bounced. His firm had updated their domain. Harold's old contact no longer worked. She searched online, found a new number, dialed it. Voicemail. In desperation, she opened Facebook Messenger and typed Harold's name. No profile. Blocked. She stared at her reflection in the black screen for a long moment. Mascara perfect. Lipstick sharp. But something in her eyes looked different now, small. Almost peripheral. Like she'd been written out of the frame. Upstairs, Tyler was blasting music again. Something about winning. Something about being a king. Denise closed the laptop. Walked to the kitchen. She needed a drink. And an explanation. But neither were coming. Denise was halfway into Downward Dog when she caught the whisper. 2 mats over, Stacy, tight ponytail, fake tan, the kind of woman who lived for HOA drama, leaned in close to another woman and murmured, "It was Ron. By the bar near the lake. Thursday night. Blonde. Definitely not Denise." The other woman let out a low, knowing like she'd just heard about someone's dog getting hit by karma. Denise tried to focus on her breath. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the teeth. But the words clawed into her head. Blonde. Not Denise. She told herself it was gossip. Small town, bored housewife theater. But a sliver of her stomach had already twisted into that old familiar knot, the one she used to feel before Harold would come home late from a job site, and she wanted there to be another woman, just so she could have a reason to feel important again. After class, Stacy intercepted her in the parking lot, all faux concern and Botoxed brows. "Hey, hon," she said. "Just, be careful. Men like that? They play short games. They get bored fast, especially when the spotlight moves off them." Denise smiled like a woman holding a grenade behind her back. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." At home, Tyler was in a full tantrum. "This is ruining everything," he shouted, flinging college brochures across the table. "I had 3 interviews lined up. They asked me about financials. How the hell do I tell them my tuition got nuked?" Denise rubbed her temples. "We're figuring it out. You said Harold would pay. I thought he would." Tyler paced the kitchen, fist balled. "You let Ron get in your head. You pushed Harold out. And now everything's—" He stopped. Looked away. Denise blinked. "Now everything's what?" He didn't answer. Just stormed off. Slammed his bedroom door so hard the framed family photo in the hallway tilted sideways. Denise stared at the photo. Tyler was 13 in it, braces and dimples. Harold's hand rested on his shoulder like an anchor. She remembered that day, how Harold had been the only one who thought to bring sunscreen. How he'd driven them home after Tyler got sick from too many hot dogs. How she'd snapped at him for hovering too much. And now he was gone. Just erased. That afternoon, Denise drove to Harold's old office. The place looked the same. Sterile lobby, fake ficus in the corner, receptionist with the same bored expression and glassy eyes. "I'm here to see Harold," she said, forcing cheer. The receptionist didn't even look up. "He doesn't work here anymore." Denise blinked. "What?" "He sold his stake in the firm 6 weeks ago. New partners took over. He's not affiliated." Denise's throat tightened. "Can you tell me where he went? Or give me a forwarding?" The receptionist stood and walked to the filing cabinet without a word. Returned with a sealed envelope. Plain. No return address. Just her name. Denise Chandler. "He said you might come by eventually." Denise took it, hands trembling. In the car, she tore it open. Inside were 3 pages. The first, confirmation that Clark Reed Holdings now owned the property formerly listed under Harold's name. The second, a copy of the trust reallocation to the new Community Scholarship Fund, already active. The third, a typed note in Harold's handwriting font. No greeting. No sign-off. "You always thought I wouldn't act. That I was too comfortable, too predictable. Turns out, I was just waiting for clarity. You gave it to me the day your son said Ron was better. Thank him for the motivation." Denise sat motionless in the driver's seat for 10 full minutes, envelope clutched in her lap. The whispers from yoga class weren't just gossip. They were foreshadowing. Ron was unraveling. Tyler was boiling. And Harold? Harold was winning. Quietly. Surgically. She hadn't lost a battle. She'd walked off the field before realizing the war had already started. The documents made a neat little stack on the kitchen island. White paper. Black ink. Sharp edges. No color. No warmth. Like an autopsy report. Denise skimmed the top page, her name in bold, followed by legal phrases she didn't recognize but felt like hammers. Trust dissolution initiated. Beneficiary privileges revoked. Reallocation effective immediately. Her mouth went dry. The second page was worse. Tyler's college fund, officially terminated. Not dormant, not paused. Dissolved. The account was liquidated into a new holding under the Clark Reed Education Initiative. She recognized that name now. The LLC Harold had used to ghost transfer the house. And now, the same entity was listed as the controlling manager of the scholarship program. Priority, low-income first-generation college applicants. Independent board oversight. Translation, Tyler was locked out. No recourse. No appeal. The last page made her knees weak. House title. Legally reassigned to Clark Reed Holdings, effective 2 weeks ago. With a note at the bottom. Current residents may occupy property for 30 days pending vacancy or new lease agreement. She dropped the paper and grabbed her phone. Dialed the county clerk's office, hands trembling. Hi. Yes, I'm trying to verify the ownership of a property on Willow Bend Drive, number 3141. She could hear typing, polite clicking, someone chewing gum on the other end. Yes, that was transferred from private ownership to Clark Reed Holdings LLC on the 12th. The clerk said matter-of-factly. Is there a specific document you need? Denise felt like the floor was tilting. No, that's all. She hung up. Outside, she could hear Ron's Porsche pulling into the driveway. Those obnoxious revs he always added, like the neighbors needed to know a midlife crisis had arrived. She didn't wait. When he stepped into the house, she met him at the threshold of the kitchen, paper in one hand, glass of wine in the other. She didn't say hello. He took the house, she said. Voice flat. He used that LLC, Clark Reed, or whatever. It's company property now. Ron blinked. Wait, what? She handed him the document. He read it once. Then again. You said he'd roll over, she hissed. Ron ran a hand through his too dark hair, jaw tightening. I didn't think he had it in him. He froze the trust. Terminated it. It's gone. The whole damn fund. Ron handed the papers back, looking off like he was trying to do math in his head. That man plays long games. Denise exploded. You think? She stormed off to the bedroom, dug through the drawer where she kept the one piece of paper she never thought she'd need. Harold's old address, scribbled on an envelope from years ago, before they moved into her dream home. Before Ron. Before everything started melting behind polished smiles and Instagram captions. She drove. Fast. Didn't tell Ron. Didn't bring Tyler. When she pulled into the apartment complex, everything looked too quiet. A different world. It didn't feel like Harold. It felt stripped. No flowers. No car in the spot. Just a door. Number 3B. She got out, walked up the steps. Her hand hovered over the doorbell, but she didn't press it. She knocked. Nothing. Waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. She leaned in close to the door, as if she could hear something. Breathing. Movement. Him. She whispered, Harold, please. But the silence felt intentional. Like a choice. Not absence, exile. She stayed there for 20 minutes, arms wrapped around herself as the wind picked up. She kept glancing at the door, hoping it would shift, creak, something. But it remained shut. Impossibly quiet. Like a vault that never held anything for her in the first place. Finally, she sat on the stoop. Opened her phone. Tried calling his number again, still disconnected. Her thumb hovered over her messages. She could text. Apologize. Beg. Instead, she stared at the screen and typed nothing. Back home, Ron was watching sports with the sound too loud. Tyler was upstairs, probably tearing holes in his acceptance letters. The kitchen lights buzzed faintly overhead. The house felt colder now, like it knew it didn't belong to her anymore. She poured another drink. And this time, it didn't taste like wine. It tasted like powerlessness. The sound of the laptop hitting the floor was sharp, final, like a bone snapping. Tyler stood over the shattered mess, chest heaving, face red and slick with sweat. His desk chair was overturned, textbooks flung across the carpet. On the wall, his college acceptance letters, Yale, Northwestern, USC, hung like mocking trophies. Symbols of a future that had vanished with the click of a button he hadn't even been allowed to witness. I had everything lined up, he screamed. He knew that. Why would he do this now? Denise stood in the doorway, arms folded like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. Her mouth opened, then shut. She watched her son unravel like a cheap threadbare sweater, and for once, she didn't jump in to fix it. He turned on her. Say something. She stepped into the room slowly. Not as his mother. As a witness to consequences finally arriving. You did it, she said quietly, because you told him Ron was better. Tyler blinked, stunned. What? You sat in that living room, she continued, on that couch Harold picked out, in the house he built, under the roof he paid for, and you told him, your words, that Mom's new man is better than you. Tyler's face contorted. I didn't mean it like that. But you said it. And he heard you. And that man, for 17 years, did nothing but show up for you. Every parent-teacher night. Every scraped knee. Every science fair where your real dad didn't bother to send a postcard. Harold was there. I just wanted him to back off. Tyler yelled. I didn't know he'd Jesus, Mom. He destroyed me. No, she said, voice low, trembling. You destroyed his trust. And trust, Tyler, isn't a toy. You don't get to break it and then cry when it doesn't come back. Tyler grabbed the desk chair and hurled it into the wall. It cracked the plaster. One of the letters fell. He stood there panting, shaking, looking 12 years old again and terrified. Fix it, he begged. Please. Just call him. Denise didn't answer. She turned and walked out. It wasn't that she didn't want to help. It was that she finally understood Harold hadn't just withdrawn his money. He'd withdrawn himself. That night, when the house was dark and Tyler had retreated to the wreckage of his room, Denise grabbed her keys. She didn't tell Ron where she was going. She didn't leave a note. She drove in silence. The streets were mostly empty, lit only by traffic signals cycling through colors for cars that weren't there. When she reached Harold's apartment complex, the building looked as uninviting as it had the first time. Brick, blank, indifferent. She parked, turned off the ignition, and waited. Maybe he'd come home late. Maybe he was inside, sitting in the dark, sipping whatever he drank now. Maybe he was watching the security camera on his peephole, seeing her there, weighing the cost of compassion. She waited 37 minutes. Long enough for her mascara to smear. Long enough for the shame to set in. A man who had always shown up, had finally decided not to. She buried her face in her hands and cried. Quietly, but with the kind of grief that wasn't just for losing someone, but for realizing you had handed them the scissors and helped cut the cord. The door creaked open on the third knock, but only halfway. Just enough for Harold to see her face, mascara smudged, eyes raw, lips tight like they were holding in everything she couldn't afford to scream in a parking lot. Please, she whispered. He didn't say a word, just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like a tenant returning to a burned-out home. The apartment was small, clean, deliberately impersonal. No photos, no clutter. The couch looked barely sat on. A single coffee mug on the table, steam rising faintly. Can we sit? She asked. You can, he replied, then gestured to the worn armchair across from him. He remained standing, arms crossed. She sank into the seat like her bones had given up. Harold, she said, voice cracking. Can we fix this? Please. He watched her for a long moment, then walked into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. Returned. Still standing. Why now? She looked up. Because Tyler's. No, he cut in. Why now? Why not when the trust first bounced? Why not after I froze the fund? Why not when I left? Why now? Denise swallowed. Because I didn't know how far you'd take it. He laughed once. A dry, humorless sound. She leaned forward, hands clasped. Harold, he's a stupid kid. He said something cruel. But you and I both know he's scared now. He needs help. You raised him. You were more of a father then. Would you have come, he asked suddenly, if Ron hadn't started showing cracks? Her lips parted. Closed. She blinked twice. looked away. Harold nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something he already knew. He sat across from her. Set the water down. Tyler's fund, he said, is gone. Legally. Permanently. Her whole body flinched. The money was reassigned. It's part of the Clark Reed Community Initiative now. College scholarships for working-class kids. First gen. Kids with no safety net. You can reverse it, she said quickly. We'll go to your lawyer. Tell him it was a mistake. I don't make legal mistakes. Denise stared at him like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. This wasn't the Harold who sat in her driveway with Gatorade when she had migraines. This wasn't the Harold who drove 6 hours to surprise her on her birthday when Tyler was 6 and puking on his cake. This Harold was colder. Still. Measured. I'm not doing this to hurt you, he said finally. Or him. She scoffed. You froze his future, Harold. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. No. You let him believe that future was unconditional. You taught him that respect was optional. That loyalty was something people owe you, not something you earn. Tears welled up again. She tried to keep them in. Failed. He continued, voice even. I didn't break him. I stopped protecting him from the break he already had coming. They sat in silence. Then he added, softly, I didn't want to become this version of myself. I gave you 1,000 chances to prove I didn't have to. Denise stood slowly. Her knees buckled a bit. Is there anything you can do? Even something small? Harold looked at her. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Sadness? Pity? He walked to a drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, handed it to her. It was a list, local scholarship foundations, essay competitions, alternative funding options. I didn't bury him, he said. But I'm done carrying him. She held the paper with shaking hands. You used to say he was your son. He nodded. He used to act like it. Then stood up. Walked to the door. Opened it. Denise looked at him, begging for anything, even a final spark of warmth. But all he said was, lock it behind you. She stepped out. The door clicked shut with a sound that felt far louder than it should have. The letter arrived in a thick envelope with red stamped edges and the kind of official gravity usually reserved for lawsuits or death notices. Certified. Signature required. Delivered with that quiet sympathy from the mailman who clearly already knew too much. Denise signed for it with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. She sat at the kitchen table, same spot where she once uncorked a bottle of red and told her sister on speaker, Harold will never leave. He needs to feel needed. Now, the bottle was gone. The table felt colder. Emptier. Like it knew its time was nearly up. She opened the envelope slowly, as if peeling off skin. The first page was brutal in its clarity. Notice of residency termination. You are not listed as an owner, co-owner, or legal tenant on record. Clark Reed Holdings LLC hereby grants you 30 days to vacate the premises. No appeal. No loophole. No lifeline. The second page was worse. A handwritten note. Crisp. Unfolded. Just 12 words, but they hit like a sledgehammer. You told me what I wasn't. I believed you. Harold. Denise stared at it for a full minute before she even blinked. The irony was perfect. Poetic. Infuriating. She had said those words once, years ago, in a heat-of-the-moment argument she barely remembered. Something like, you're not his real father, Harold. You're just there. She said it to wound. To win an argument. To shift the weight of her own resentment. Now it was law. Tyler came down the stairs groggy and still in his boxers, rubbing his eyes. What's that? She didn't answer. Just handed him the letter. He read it silently, then again, slower. When his eyes hit the signature, something inside him snapped. His knees buckled, and he dropped into a chair. No, he can't. This was our house, he stammered. Denise didn't move. Tyler's voice rose, cracked. He raised me. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to tie a tie, how to check the oil. He tucked me in. And He looked up at her like a man realizing his reflection was a stranger. I told him Ron was better. I said it, didn't I? Denise nodded. You did. He wiped his face with both hands, now frantic. Okay, so we call him. We fix it. I'll apologize. I'll write a letter. Tyler. Her voice was thin. He's done. Tyler slammed his fist on the table, then froze, staring at the dent he'd left in the wood. The same wood Harold refinished by hand. The same kitchen Harold had built from scratch, plank by plank, because Denise wanted a warmer vibe. There was no warmth now, only echoes. Then came the knock. 2 men in matching shirts. Movers. Clipboard in hand. Clark Reed Holdings, one asked. We've got a pre-scheduled pickup. Says you're vacating this address? Denise nodded without speaking. The mover glanced at Tyler, who had slumped forward, face buried in his arms. They started with the living room. Carefully, efficiently, like it was someone else's home. At 5 p.m., Denise walked into the master bedroom and noticed something odd. Ron's closet was empty. No shoes. No suits. No smell of too expensive cologne. On the nightstand, a single card key from a hotel. No name. No goodbye. Just absence. She checked his drawer, empty. His car wasn't in the garage. He was gone. Just gone. No text. No call. No explanation. It hit her then. This wasn't just financial. This was extinction. Everything she had built was built on someone else's effort. And the moment he removed the foundation, the house didn't collapse, it evaporated. That night, as the sun set through the bay windows for what would be the last time she'd ever see it from that angle, Denise sat at the kitchen table. Same seat. Same hands folded. Only this time, there was no wine. No laughter. No plan. Just a woman watching her life get boxed up by strangers. The knock was soft. Not hesitant. Careful. Harold didn't move from his chair at first. He just sat, sipping black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug, the one with the faded words, measure twice, cut once. His father gave it to him the day he opened his first shop. He never used it until the day he left the house on Willow Bend. The knock came again, still soft, still measured. He stood, walked to the door, silent as a shadow, and looked through the peephole. There she was, Denise, alone. Her makeup was clean this time, clothes neat, hair tied back. No drama, no mascara streaks, no Ron trailing behind her like a pantomime of masculinity. Just her, holding a letter in both hands like it weighed something far heavier than paper. He watched her breathe, steady but forced. Her lips moved. He couldn't hear the words, but he could read the shape. Please. Then she knelt and placed the letter on the doormat. For a second, she stayed crouched like that, as if waiting for the door to swing open, to be pulled inside, to be forgiven. But it didn't, and she wasn't. She stood, slow and stiff like her knees ached. Took one final look at the door, then turned and walked away. Harold watched until she disappeared down the stairs. Then another few seconds longer. He didn't reach for the doorknob. He didn't pick up the envelope. Instead, he closed the blinds. The light in the room shifted. Softer now. Warmer. He walked back through the quiet space. The small apartment that had no photos on the walls, except one. He stopped in front of it. His father. Grease under his fingernails, blue flannel shirt. Smile like someone who never needed to raise his voice to end a conversation. Harold stared at the image. Then whispered, "Lesson passed down, Dad." Not out of anger. Not even out of grief. Out of completion. He'd spent his whole life trying to hold together things that resented the glue. He poured himself into a boy who saw loyalty as a weakness, and a woman who mistook consistency for boredom. And now, they were gone. Not dead. Not ruined. Just gone. He walked to the living room, sunlight pouring in through the western window, lighting up the dust like stars. Sat back down in his chair. Lifted the mug. Outside, the world spun on. Inside, Harold finally stopped. I nearly dropped my glass when I saw his name. There it was, plain as day, nestled between Cousin Marlene +1 and Golf Buddy Dan. Alan Dam Dorsey. RSVP'd. Chicken or fish. +1. I blinked, thinking maybe my eyes had done that thing they do sometimes. Mixing names, jumbling letters. But no. Alan Dorsey. The man who used to park his Lexus 2 blocks away so the neighbors wouldn't see. The man who grinned in my face at barbecues and called me brother while he was screwing my wife. I was sitting at my daughter's kitchen table in Dallas, going over seating charts and floral arrangements while she FaceTimed with the wedding planner. The house smelled like cinnamon and drywall dust. She and her fiancé were still finishing renovations, bless their hearts. I was just there to help. Be the good ex-husband. Be the supportive dad. Smile when Denise made her usual passive-aggressive jokes. Nod when she said things like, Well, it's Melissa's day, Carl. Not ours. But then that name. His name. I didn't say anything at first. Just folded the list closed like it was a newspaper I'd finished reading. But my hand was trembling just enough that the edge of the paper tapped the table. Tap, 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 like a warning bell in my skull. Denise noticed. You okay? She asked, casual, like she already knew. I looked her in the eye. She was sipping wine from a glass that still had the store sticker on it. Fancy new stemware for the occasion. Of course. I leaned back slowly, folding my arms. Alan Dorsey's on the guest list. She didn't even flinch. Didn't blink. Just swirled the wine and said, Melissa said you're both adults. Just be civil. All right, fellas, quick break. We're shooting for 10K subscribers. If you're enjoying these gripping tales of betrayal, hit that subscribe button, and let's get back to the story. That word, civil, hit me like a punch in the throat. Civil? I was civil when I didn't throw a chair through our bedroom window the night I found out. Civil when I didn't go to Alan's office and drag him by his collar through the goddamn parking lot. Civil when I signed those divorce papers, half sedated and holding back a scream. Civil was what I'd been for 7 goddamn years. Now I was being asked to be civil at my own daughter's wedding? With the man who split my life in half sitting 3 tables away from me, sipping Pinot Grigio, and probably telling some smug story about Italian villas and how he knew Melissa when she was just this tall? I stood up. Denise stiffened. Carl, she said, let's not make this about ancient history. I looked at her, really looked, at the Botoxed forehead trying to stay calm, the tight-lipped expression that said I still control this narrative. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just said one word. Sure. Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave tire tracks on her fancy new driveway. I just drove home in silence. I passed the old high school, the auto repair shop where Melissa worked part-time in college, the diner where Denise used to meet Alan behind my back. I saw ghosts everywhere. They smiled like nothing had happened. Like 7 years of humiliation could be papered over with a fancy white dress and centerpieces that cost more than my truck's transmission. When I got home, I sat on the porch and cracked open a lukewarm beer. The bottle cap fell onto the deck with a sharp clink. Funny how even the smallest sounds can punch through your skull when you're that hollow inside. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dug out a shoebox from the back of my closet. Not the kind with old letters or baby shoes. No, this one held something else. Blueprints, copies of contracts, an old USB stick, and a leather-bound folder with my initials embossed from my project supervisor days. I laid them out on the dining table, like puzzle pieces. Years of discipline and planning had taught me one thing. The most effective revenge is delivered with precision, not fury. I looked at the RSVP card one more time. His handwriting was still the same, arrogant, loopy, like he was signing autographs for fans. Looking forward to celebrating with the family, it read. I smiled. Not with joy, but with something deeper. Colder. Me too, Alan. Me too. The day after I found his name on that list, I woke up at 5:42 a.m. out of habit. Years of being the first one on site never leave you. Even if the only job you've got now is hauling folding chairs into a U-Haul and pretending you're thrilled about ivory seat cushions. Melissa sent me a cheerful, "Thanks, Dad," with a stream of emojis when I confirmed I'd covered the final deposit for the custom bar. Something about smoked rosemary garnishes and bourbon taps. Her fiancé wanted rustic upscale, which, near as I could tell, meant spending 20 grand to make it look like you didn't spend 20 grand. I smiled through it all. I posed for family photos at the pre-wedding dinner. Denise made a toast, clinked her glass against mine, and said, "Look at us. Not bad for a couple of exes, huh?" And I laughed, even when Alan's name was casually mentioned during a conversation about seating logistics. Oh yeah, he'll probably sit with the Chesters. I didn't flinch. But every night, when I got back to my place, I pulled that invitation out of the drawer. I didn't know why I kept staring at it. Maybe because it was so permanent, so polished. Alan Dorsey and guest. In engraved gold, no less. Like he was a goddamn ambassador. On the third night, after a rehearsal dinner where Denise hugged me too long and whispered, "Thank you for being decent," I sat on my porch with that card in my hand and dialed a number from a contact I hadn't used since Melissa's Sweet 16. Lisa Jennings, Bellwood Gardens. Lisa, this is Carl Morton. Silence for a beat. Then Carl. Wow, been a while. You calling about the bar setup? No, I said. This is a confidential security matter. I'll explain everything in person. There was another pause. But Lisa wasn't the kind of woman who needed hand-holding. I used to work with her when she managed vendor timelines like a battlefield general. All right, she said finally. Come by after 10. Back office in trance. Click. I stared at my phone for a minute before setting it down. Then, I walked into the garage, opened the old tool chest, and pulled out a plain manila envelope. Inside was everything I needed. Nothing criminal, nothing dramatic. Just enough. Just enough to raise eyebrows. Just enough to raise questions. Just enough to make someone like Lisa Jennings look me in the eye and say, "You sure you want to do this?" Because that's the beauty of subtle sabotage. You don't scream. You don't threaten. You don't draw blood. You let the system do what it's designed to do. Protect the illusion of peace. And Alan? Alan was a threat to peace. To my daughter's peace. Let him have his golf tournaments and steakhouse loyalty cards. Let him preen in his Patagonia quarter zip. But he would not stand in that garden while my daughter walked down the aisle. He would not raise a glass on that sacred ground, not on my watch. So I went back inside, laid out the documents, checked every detail twice. Then I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the creak of the fan and the low hum of my neighbor's sprinkler. No one knew what I was doing. Not Melissa, not Denise, certainly not Alan. To them, I was still the guy showing up early to unload chairs. The guy writing checks. The guy who just smiled and said, whatever's easiest, every time a decision was made. But beneath it all, the wedding machine kept rolling. And I was in the engine room, slowly unscrewing the bolts. Honestly, Dad, I'm proud of you, Melissa said, wrapping her arms around me like I'd just beaten cancer. You've been amazing through all this. I smiled, because that's what fathers do. We smile through pain, through betrayal, through the goddamn absurdity of having to clap ourselves on the back for not flipping the table when your ex-wife's ex-lover is invited to your daughter's wedding. Denise echoed the sentiment over coffee that same morning. You've really grown, she said, like I was her student who finally stopped throwing spitballs. It takes a big man to let go of the past. I nodded and took a sip of my burnt diner coffee. Let go of the past? They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time hides wounds. Covers them up with polite smiles, busy schedules, and tiny acts of compliance that look like growth but are really just fear dressed up in khakis. But the body remembers. Mine sure as hell did. The past wasn't gone. It was walking through the front door in 2 weeks with a tailored blazer and a guest pass. And they wanted me to clap. Alan's RSVP arrived in the mail with that same insufferable handwriting, looping and smug, like it belonged on the side of a wine bottle label. Looking forward to seeing everyone, it said, exclamation mark and all. Everyone praised me for being civil. I didn't even flinch when Melissa said, we put him near the back, just in case. It's fine, right? Sure, I said. Because what was the point in arguing now? No one noticed the way my eyes didn't smile with the rest of my face. No one noticed that I stopped drinking coffee and switched to cold soda, or that I started showing up to planning meetings 15 minutes early and leaving 10 minutes late. I was watching, listening, timing everything. Then came Friday night, 1 week before the wedding. The streets were quiet. One of those Texas nights where the heat doesn't break even after dark, and the air feels thick with unsaid things. I left my house at 11:12 p.m., the manila envelope on the passenger seat like a sleeping co-conspirator. Bellwood Gardens was empty. Just the dull orange glow of the security lights and the soft buzz of cicadas in the trees. I parked around the back. Lisa met me at the service door, her hair up, reading glasses still perched on her nose. You came late, she said. I wanted to be discreet. I handed her the envelope. No label. No fanfare. She opened it right there under the flickering backlight. She didn't speak at first. Just flipped through the documents, her fingers pausing at key words like incident, restraining suggestion, and inappropriate boundary violations. One sheet had a photo of Alan from 2018, tan, smug, his hand too low on a woman's back at a company function. Another had a timeline. Another had a handwritten note, old and crumpled, signed with Denise's name. Lisa's face shifted slowly. Eyebrows arched. Lips pressed thin. The look of someone realizing they've just been handed a live grenade, and they've got exactly 1 second to figure out which way to throw it. Understood, she finally said, pressing the envelope closed like it might bite her. I nodded, turned. No thank you. No pleasantries. Just the sound of my boots crunching gravel as I walked back to the truck. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, shirt still sticking to my back. I stared at the blank wall and thought about Alan. About how easy it had been for him to slip into my life. Into our life. And how easily he was going to be removed from this one. The past was back. But this time, it wasn't just repeating itself. It was being rewritten. The sun hit Dallas like a halogen spotlight. The kind of heat that melts lipstick and warps vinyl banners. But Bellwood Gardens glistened. Rose arches trimmed to perfection. White chairs in symmetrical rows. String quartet tuning up under the canopy like a scene from a bridal magazine. It was a damn masterpiece. I arrived early, wearing my best charcoal suit. The one I hadn't put on since Denise's attorney explained how 60-40 splits work when infidelity can't be proven in court. I shook hands, hugged out-of-town cousins, laughed politely when Uncle Rich asked if I was ready to give my baby girl away. I didn't speak to Denise. She floated around in lavender chiffon, acting like the queen mother of reconciliation. When our eyes did meet, briefly, she nodded with that brittle smile people use at funerals. I just kept moving. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2:30. Guests were being ushered in, camera phones already out, bouquets fluffing, programs fanning. Then at 2:18 p.m., the Lexus pulled in. Of course it was a Lexus. White, gleaming, subtle enough to look respectable, smug enough to say country club member. Alan Dorsey stepped out in a navy suit, tie undone, just so. He had the same cologne. I swear to God I could smell it from across the lawn, some citrusy nonsense that made women say, "You smell expensive." His date, a woman half his age with Instagram eyebrows, linked arms with him. He smirked, waved at someone near the refreshment table, and began his strut toward the guest area. That was when the 2 uniformed security guards stepped in front of him. I didn't flinch, didn't look, just sipped my ginger ale. "Sir," one of them said, "we need to speak with you privately." Alan slowed but didn't stop. "It's okay, I'm on the guest list." "Alan Dorsey." One guard blocked his path. "Sir, you're not allowed on the premises." "Excuse me." Alan's voice sharpened. His date blinked, wide-eyed. I said, "You're not allowed on the premises." The guests started turning. Conversations quieted. The string quartet froze in mid-tune. One aunt dropped her program. Alan's voice rose. "This is a mistake. I'm a personal friend of the bride's family. I have paperwork here indicating otherwise." I watched him go red. Redder than I expected. He wasn't used to being denied. Not in public. Not by hired muscle. Melissa saw the commotion from the bridal prep tent and came flying across the lawn in heels she hadn't broken in yet. "What's going on?" she asked, panting. Alan turned to her like a castaway spotting a rescue boat. "Melissa, they're saying I can't." "Carl, you okay?" Melissa looked at me. I didn't answer, just kept my eyes on Alan, who was now frantically trying to explain to the head of security that this was all a ridiculous misunderstanding. The guards were firm, but professional. "Sir, this was arranged in advance. You were flagged. You need to leave the premises." Whispers spread through the crowd like gasoline. "Isn't that the guy from the firm Denise worked at?" "Wait, isn't that the dude who you know?" "Oh my God. Didn't he wreck Carl and Denise's marriage?" "No way." Alan's face twisted into something between panic and performance rage. He looked around, but there was no saving this. No suave exit. No speech. Just silence. Then cameras. At least 3 phones were pointed at him now. He tried one last time, turning to Melissa. "I don't know what's going on here, but this is humiliating. I came to support you." Melissa didn't speak. She looked from Alan to me, to the security staff, to the growing crowd of guests who were now witnessing a very public reckoning. Then she said quietly, "Maybe you should go." That was it. Alan stared at her like he'd just swallowed glass. Then he spun around, muttering something under his breath, and stormed back toward his Lexus. His date followed, heels clicking faster now. I turned back to the refreshments table, took another sip of ginger ale. The quartet started again, hesitantly. The ceremony would go on. but the cracks had already started to show. I didn't even get a full minute to enjoy the echo of his car pulling away. Melissa was on me before I finished my ginger ale. She grabbed my elbow, dragging me behind the rose arch like I was a toddler who'd picked a fight in church. Her heels sank into the soft grass with every step, and her grip tightened with each breath. "What did you do?" she hissed. Her eyes were wide, frantic, glitter smeared on the corner of one lid from tears or sweat. I couldn't tell which. The string quartet was still trying to salvage ambience with an off-key rendition of Canon in D, but nobody was listening anymore. Not really. I kept my voice low, measured. I kept things peaceful. Melissa let out a bitter scoff. "Peaceful? You had him thrown out in front of everyone." I shrugged. "Not everyone. Only those watching." "Dad, what the hell was that? You said you were okay with it." "You said." I said sure. I interrupted. Didn't say what I meant by it. She stared at me, waiting for the punchline. I didn't offer one. My face was stone, and it made her angrier. That's when Denise strutted over, like a general hearing gunfire near the command tent. "What is going on?" she snapped, arms crossed, jaw clenched in that performative indignation she always used in front of an audience. "Did you seriously just humiliate a guest? In public? At our daughter's wedding?" I leaned against the trellis, calm as ever. Lisa, the venue manager, had apparently seen this scene playing out from the balcony above and made her way down, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. No panic, no apologies. Just the cool demeanor of a woman used to cleaning up other people's messes without breaking a sweat. She approached us and cleared her throat. "This man," she said, tapping her pen against the incident sheet she now held, "was flagged for inappropriate conduct regarding the family. We operate on a client protection policy. The client reserved the right to restrict access to anyone deemed potentially disruptive." Denise blinked. "What?" Lisa didn't flinch. This was discussed in person. Confidential documentation was submitted. Our security was briefed accordingly. Melissa turned to me, eyes darting between the two women like she was trying to spot which one was lying. You filed paperwork on Alan?" I nodded. Denise stepped in front of me now, full righteous fury ignited. "You had no right to make that decision without our input. You hijacked this event." "Interesting choice of words," I said. "Alan knows a thing or two about hijacking." "You're unbelievable," she spat. "Do you know how much this has damaged her day? The embarrassment? The chaos? Do you even care?" Lisa chimed in gently, trying to steer the conversation back into professionalism. "We handled the matter discreetly. He escalated the situation himself. Security remained courteous. Guests responded accordingly. The situation was contained. Contained. Like it was a biohazard." Denise looked like she wanted to slap me. Instead, she just breathed hard through her nose and stomped off toward the cocktail tent, muttering something about control issues and therapy. Melissa stayed. "I asked you for one thing," she whispered. "To keep it together." "I did," I said. "You still have your venue, your flowers, your band, your guests. Just not your mother's side piece in the third row grinning through your vows like nothing ever happened." She turned her back on me for a second, both hands on her hips, wedding bracelet glinting in the sun. "It's not about him, Dad. It's about me. This is my day." I nodded slowly. "And now, he won't be in your pictures." Melissa didn't respond. The photographer called out for the bridal party. Lisa gave me a faint, approving nod and slipped back into the crowd. My daughter stood there another moment, chewing her lip, torn between fury and something she didn't want to name. She didn't thank me, didn't scream either, just walked away. The ceremony didn't start at 2:30. Not exactly. At 2:37, the string quartet gave up trying to play over the whispering and just paused, bows hanging limp. I was darting toward the back lawn where half the crowd was now facing the wrong direction. The murmurs weren't quiet anymore. That guy, wasn't he the one Denise cheated with? I knew that face looked familiar. He used to come to the neighborhood cookouts, didn't he? Wait, he got kicked out? Why would you even invite someone like that? I mean, is Carl okay? Honestly, I'd have decked him. The whispers weren't accusatory. They weren't about me. Not yet. They were about him. Alan Dorsey, who was now stomping across the gravel like a toddler leaving a theme park early. His jacket was slung over one shoulder, sweat glistening on his forehead, Date trailing behind him like a deer in a forest fire. He wasn't shouting anymore, just muttering, cursing under his breath like the whole situation was beneath him. And maybe it was. Alan never had the stomach for humiliation. He thrived on control, on appearing composed, successful, above the fray. Which is why seeing him flushed, rejected, and scurrying back to his Lexus while 50 sun-drenched Texans stared holes through his back, that was justice in its purest form. Denise hovered near the cocktail bar, pretending to joke with the florist while her eyes scanned the field like a sniper looking for PR damage. She was losing control of the story, and she knew it. I, on the other hand, was done performing. I handed my glass to a caterer, nodded at no one in particular, and stepped off the main path toward the side gardens. Shade from an oak tree wrapped around me like a closing curtain. I found a bench out of sight and sat down, finally exhaling. Not with relief, with precision. I'd played my part. Now I could watch from the wings. Back near the altar, Melissa was trying her best to duct tape the moment back together. She was standing tall, brushing non-existent lint off her dress, forcing a smile for the guests returning to their seats. Bridesmaids flitted nervously around her, adjusting train and veil and bouquet. But the shine had dulled. The glow was gone. The music resumed, haltingly. The second violinist missed the cue. The pianist restarted twice. People clapped too loudly, too soon, like they were trying to pretend nothing had happened. But they had seen. They'd seen Alan escorted out like a criminal. They'd seen Denise red-faced and shaken. And they'd seen me, standing still as a statue in the middle of it all, saying nothing. The whispers would spread. Already were. Some would spin it as gossip. Some would cheer it as justice. But most, especially the ones who knew why, they'd remember it. Not just the ceremony. The moment. Because in a world obsessed with happy endings, there's something unforgettable about a man quietly pulling one thread, just one, and watching the whole picture fray. Behind the draped curtains separating the ceremony space from the staff corridor, everything pretty cracked wide open. You invited him, Mom. Melissa's voice wasn't loud, but it carried. That sharp, trembling pitch you only hear from someone teetering between rage and tears. I couldn't see them, but I could hear every word from my bench beneath the oak tree. The shade was cooler now, long shadows stretching across the gravel, cicadas starting to whisper. I thought Denise started, but Melissa cut her off. No, don't give me that you thought he'd be civil crap. You knew what he did. You knew what he meant to Dad. You knew. And you brought him anyway. Why? I didn't think your father would weaponize the venue. Denise shot back, voice suddenly shrill. Jesus, Melissa, you act like I orchestrated some conspiracy. Because it feels like one. A pause. A rustle. Someone knocked something over, maybe a makeup brush, maybe a champagne flute. The kind of clumsy silence that follows a slap, whether physical or emotional. Outside, I cracked open a cold can of root beer from the little cooler I'd packed myself. No one offered me drinks during the chaos, and I hadn't asked. I didn't need champagne. I had this. And the sunset. And the knowledge that while everyone else scrambled inside trying to manage a narrative, I had already rewritten it. The florists came and went like ghosts, heads down, quick steps. One dropped a bouquet near the service entrance and muttered, I knew I should have called in today. The catering crew clumped together near the delivery dock, hushed and wide-eyed, as if they were hiding from a sniper instead of a screaming match about infidelity and guest lists. Lisa passed by once, clipboard clutched tight, jaw clenched in neutral professionalism. She didn't say a word to me, just offered a glance that might have been respect, or fear, or both. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Twice. Then again. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't have to. Melissa. Denise. Maybe both. Maybe her fiancé, trying to mediate what was left of the fairy tale. I didn't care. Let them scream. Let them flail and panic behind layers of satin and white roses and carefully curated hors d'oeuvres. I had said my piece. With action. With calm. That's the thing about chaos. Most people think it starts loud. They're wrong. The worst chaos starts quiet. One small shift. One calm decision. One envelope handed off in the dark. And now? Denise was unraveling. Melissa was questioning. The help was scattering. The groom's parents were probably wondering what kind of circus they just married into. And I was sipping my soda and watching the sun melt into the Dallas skyline like nothing at all had gone wrong. It started with a snicker behind a phone screen. One of the bridesmaids, Sierra, I think, filmed the whole thing from the cocktail tent. You could hear the quartet stalling in the background while Alan puffed his chest and tried to argue with the security guard, only to get swatted down like a fly at a picnic. Her voice came through in the clip, whispering, "Y'all, I told you this was gonna blow up," followed by the now infamous caption. When your mom invites her ex-affair partner to the wedding and he gets kicked out by the bride's own dad. Exploding head popcorn ring. Posted at 4:13 p.m. By 4:17, it had 11,000 views. By 6 p.m., it was viral. Somewhere between the first shared TikTok and the third repost on a private Facebook group called Real Housewives of Dallas Suburbs, the story mutated. People filled in blanks with their own color commentary. Screenshots from the wedding's Eventbrite page surfaced. An old photo of Alan surfaced, arms around Denise at a charity gala in 2016. Comments lit up like a 4th of July sparkler soaked in gasoline. Denise always gave me bad vibes. Carl's a damn hero. Imagine humiliating your husband and your daughter in one lifetime. That bridesmaid's facial expressions alone deserve an Oscar. By midnight, hashtags were trending locally. Hashtag Dallas wedding drama. Hashtag affair guest got bounced. Hashtag dad did right. Even Twitter got in on it. Someone posted a meme of Alan's walk of shame with the caption, "That moment when your past gets RSVP'd but security disagrees." I didn't find out until the next morning. I had my phone turned off that night. I grilled a steak, watched a rerun of Columbo, and slept like a man who finally dropped a boulder he'd been carrying since 2016. It was Rick, my old neighbor, who texted me the link at 6:04 a.m. "Bro, you're on TikTok. And I think half the county just made you their folk hero." When I opened the video, it had crossed 1.2 million views. Melissa's bridesmaids were already fielding DM requests. One local podcaster announced he'd do a deep dive into the scandal on Monday's episode. A cousin posted a photo of the RSVP card with Alan's name circled in red Sharpie, captioned, "The mistake that started it all." Denise, bless her delusional heart, tried damage control by commenting under the original video, "This is a private family matter. Please respect our daughter's privacy." It was too late. Privacy was a quaint idea. Like cassette tapes or rotary phones. Once it hit the internet, it belonged to everyone. And everyone had opinions. Some said I ruined the wedding. Others called me a legend. A few trolls called it toxic masculinity. One guy, some retired vet in Oklahoma, just wrote, "That man did what needed to be done." But the one that stuck with me was a comment left by a stranger named at divorcebutwise57. People keep asking why he kicked the guy out. The better question is, why did he ever have to watch that man walk into his daughter's wedding at all? Damn right. My phone rang at 7:41 a.m. Caller ID, Denise, mobile. I let it buzz twice before I answered. Not because I was hesitant, because I wanted her to know I wasn't scrambling to pick up. Her voice came through like a chainsaw trying to whisper, "Take the post down. Now." Melissa's crying. She's locked herself in the bathroom and won't talk to anyone. I didn't sigh. Didn't blink. I didn't post anything, I said flatly. "You think you're being clever?" She snapped. "You lit the damn match and handed it to that girl. You think this is some kind of game?" I stepped outside onto my porch, the morning sun barely cresting the rooftops, dew still fresh on the railing. The air was thick with that uncomfortable warmth Dallas gets before it decides to punish you with humidity. "Denise," I said slowly, "I didn't tell anyone to record Alan making a fool of himself. I didn't ask anyone to upload it. And I sure as hell didn't ask your affair partner to show up like a peacock on cocaine." Her breath caught. I could feel the fury through the line. "You ruined this for everyone," she spat. I smiled to myself. No, I just made sure he wasn't in the pictures. I hung up. 3 minutes later, voicemail. Melissa this time. I didn't answer on purpose. Let it go to the recorder. Her voice was trembling, soft, like she was trying to hold it together in front of people and failing. "Dad, why did you do this today? Of all days? I know what he did. I know. But you didn't have to make a scene. People are laughing, sharing it like it's a joke. My wedding. It was supposed to be mine. Not another story about you and Mom and your damn Cold War." I played it back twice. Her voice cracked at "my wedding." Like a porcelain plate dropped on a carpet, quiet, but irreversible. Then I deleted it. No reply. No explanation. Not even a text. Because what she didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that this wasn't about the damn wedding. This was about a man who showed up to take something he didn't deserve. Again. And no matter how many bouquets, choreographed dances, or $600 centerpieces they used to cover it up, I wasn't going to let that happen. Not anymore. I poured myself a second cup of coffee. No sugar. No cream. Just bitter and black and honest. Then I packed my things, loaded the cooler back into my truck, and started driving. No destination. Just away. Past the suburbs. Past the wedding venue. Just road. Just space. No radio. No GPS. Just the steady hum of tires and the silence I'd earned. I didn't need to explain myself to Denise. I didn't owe Melissa an apology. What they call damage. I called balance. A week later, I was baiting a hook on a quiet dock with two of my oldest friends, Eli and Wes, when my name came up on the radio. Not just my name. The story. It was a local station, Can-Easy 103.1 FM, the voice of Dallas suburbia. Some smug midday host with too much energy and not enough depth was teeing it up like a game show segment. All right, folks, hot topic of the hour. Father ejects ex-wife's affair partner from daughter's wedding, right move, or nuclear meltdown? Eli nearly dropped his sandwich. I just kept threading the line through the hook. Wes chuckled. Well, I'll be damned. You really made the papers. They weren't kidding. The Star Telegram ran a piece titled, Father Protects Daughter from Mom's Past. Chaos at Upscale Dallas Wedding. Human interest, they called it. 2 columns of veiled gossip dressed up as journalism. There was a grainy freeze frame from the TikTok, Alan's contorted face mid-argument, my shoulder half in the shot, calm as a monk in the background. Below that, the subhead, Viral Drama Sheds Light on Family Tensions, Moral Boundaries, and Wedding Etiquette Gone Wrong. Commentary exploded. The radio callers followed predictable lines. He humiliated his daughter. Totally selfish. Are you kidding? I'd have done worse. That man broke their family. He got what he deserved. Maybe people should think twice before inviting skeletons to dance in the ballroom. Messy family drama shouldn't play out on TikTok. Yeah? Then maybe messy family decisions shouldn't be passed off as mature co-parenting. Some hosts framed it as a tragic generational rift. Others spun it like a folk legend. A few compared me to Clint Eastwood in a Hallmark thriller. One guy, who clearly hadn't read a word, said I was a toxic alpha relic and that my actions were rooted in emotional violence. Sure, let them theorize. Back in the real world, Denise's social circle imploded like wet cake. Turns out the kind of women who nod politely at brunch while secretly judging each other's marriages don't take kindly to scandal. One by one, the invites dried up. Accidental untags from group photos. Comments left unanswered. Side eyes at yoga class. By Friday, her name was practically radioactive in her tennis league. Melissa posted a short statement on Instagram. This week has been overwhelming. I understand now that certain choices caused pain for people I love. It was a misjudgment. I didn't know the full story. Please respect our family's privacy as we move forward. No mention of Alan. Or me. But she followed it up by deleting every photo that had Alan in the background. Even the rehearsal dinner shots. Cropped them cleaner than a PR firm with a deadline. People asked me, coworkers, neighbors, even the kid at the bait shop, if I had a response. I didn't. I didn't post anything. Didn't comment. Didn't explain. I was on that dock, surrounded by old dogs who didn't need words to know a man had done what was necessary. The water was still. The beer was cold. The fish weren't biting. But it didn't matter. I sat there in the quiet, my phone face down in the glove box of my truck, and watched the sun ripple across the lake like nothing in the world was broken. Because for the first time in years, it wasn't. She stood in the middle of our living room like a queen on a rotting throne, swirling her wine like it was a weapon. You're not man enough to leave, she said, voice soaked in sarcasm, eyes already drifting back to her phone, probably waiting for his text. The tone wasn't rage. No, it was worse. It was dismissal. Contempt, polished from years of getting away with it. I stared at her for a moment that lasted forever. No reaction. No flinch. Just stillness. The kind that makes people nervous once they realize they're not in control anymore. Then I said it. You're right. She laughed, snorted, actually, and plopped down on the couch like she'd won something. Didn't think so, she mumbled, remote in hand. The TV snapped on. Some cooking show. Loud. Obnoxious. She didn't even look up again. And why would she? In her head, the conversation was over. So was the marriage. She just hadn't realized who was walking away from what. Upstairs, past the room we hadn't slept in together for months, I entered my office. Unlocked the bottom drawer. Not the one with tax files or printer ink. The one marked in faint sharpie, hidden behind a stack of meaningless retirement brochures. Exit plan. Inside that drawer was 10 years of silent preparation. Not rage. Not jealousy. Just data. I'm a systems analyst. I don't argue. I observe. She forgot that. Receipts of every major purchase under my name. Screenshots of her Venmo history. Oh yes, public mode was her favorite. Copies of property deeds, one updated a few months back. And the jewel, a legally binding power of attorney she drunkenly signed at a New Year's party in 2018 because she didn't trust herself to make smart choices when tipsy. Irony's delicious when aged properly. That drawer was my version of patience. Most men roar. I archive. And listen, before we go further, I know 98% of you watching this probably aren't subscribed. But if this story hits even a nerve, if you've ever swallowed your pride while someone mocked you in your own home, click that button. It helps us finally hit our first 10,000 subscribers. And more than that, it tells my team this kind of story matters. That it's worth telling. Back to the moment. I sat at my desk, opened 3 secure tabs. One to message the movers. One to confirm the locksmith. And one more, just to reread the scheduled letter that would auto-send to her once she walked through that hollowed-out house tomorrow. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't run. I just realigned the chessboard. By 2 a.m., the documents were uploaded, the plan confirmed. One item left. I opened the safe, pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Her father gave it to me when we first bought the house. He said, use this to write down what matters. I used it to record every time she called me boring. Weak. Just the safe option. Every time she dressed for someone else's attention. Every time she looked me in the eyes and lied through her teeth about girls' night. Tessa had been betting on the quiet ones never leaving the table. She forgot the quiet ones are the only ones who ever bother to learn the rules. While she snored downstairs with her mouth half open and the TV casting flickering light over her mascara-streaked cheek, I sat upstairs in silence, working through the kind of checklist most men never think to write, until it's already too late. But I wasn't most men. And it wasn't too late. It was perfectly timed. First tab, my lawyer. Not just any lawyer, this was John Stafford, the man who once got an oil exec out of a scandal involving 3 jurisdictions, 1 yacht, and 0 fingerprints. John didn't ask questions anymore. He just replied, "Is this the green light?" I typed 1 word, "Yes." Second tab, the movers. I'd already met with them twice, off the books. They'd signed NDAs thicker than some prenups. Their instructions were surgically precise, down to which drawer of the nightstand to empty and which 2 mugs to leave behind. My mugs. All tagged, inventoried, photographed. Every item cross-referenced with the receipts I'd been collecting for over 7 years. People think letting someone else manage the finances is lazy. It's not. It's camouflage. You let them feel like they're the spender, the wild one, the free spirit. Meanwhile, you keep every receipt in a folder labeled art supplies and stack them like dominoes. You never know which one's going to tip it all over. Third tab, the locksmith. I booked him months ago, under the name of a fictitious tenant. The man was ex-military, quiet, no questions, cash only. He didn't care if I was locking out a cheating wife or a raccoon. All he asked was the time and the type of lock. Then came the paper trail. That drawer, my holy archive, had it all. Scanned images of her drunk signature on a power of attorney she thought was a wine club membership form. A handwritten note authorizing me to make changes to any accounts we share from when she thought merging finances was romantic. Property title changes that quietly shifted everything into my name during a refinancing year she didn't bother reading the terms of. All legal. All signed. All hers. It's amazing what people will agree to when they think they're untouchable. And you want to know what really made this feel like justice? She thought she was the unpredictable one. The hurricane. The storm. The passionate rebel. What she didn't realize was, I was the architect who built the house to withstand her chaos. I didn't yell when she'd leave for spa weekends without packing a single skincare product. I didn't flinch when I found a stranger's lighter in my car, under her seat. I didn't say a word when her phone started lighting up at 2:17 a.m. like it had a heartbeat of its own. Because I wasn't documenting pain. I was documenting evidence. That night, while she drooled into the throw pillow she once made fun of me for choosing, I labeled 3 folders on my desktop. Assets secured. Proof of separation. The goodbye file. Then I did something petty. I queued up her favorite Spotify playlist, the one titled Power Vibes Only. But instead of playing it, I scheduled it to autoplay on the home speakers tomorrow at 2 p.m., right after the movers finished. Track 1? Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive. Because oh, honey, she would. Just not in my house. By 5 a.m., the streets were dead silent, the kind of silence you only notice when you're doing something permanent. I'd already showered, shaved, dressed in my old work jacket, and packed the one duffel bag I'd been quietly building for over a month. It didn't contain clothes. It contained proof. 3 external hard drives. Thumb drives. Original documents. My birth certificate. A flash drive labeled Wedding Vows that, ironically, only contained video clips of her lying through her teeth. I emptied the safe deposit box at the bank's 24-hour vault downtown. Security guard barely looked at me, probably assumed I was just another old guy up early to beat the line. He had no idea I was walking out with the last decade of my life, compressed and cataloged like a forensics kit. From there, I drove to the storage facility, Unit B17. Climate-controlled, keypad access, no cameras facing the unit doors. I'd rented it 6 months earlier under a Shell LLC. Inside, the good stuff. My guitars. My dad's war medals. The handmade clock I built with my son, before he stopped calling. Everything irreplaceable. Everything mine. Then I returned to the house one last time before dawn, moving like a tenant on borrowed time. I didn't bother tiptoeing anymore. She could have woken up and found me with bags in hand and backup files spread across the table, and I still wouldn't have blinked. Because she wouldn't understand what was happening until it was done. Narcissists never do. I walked through the house once slowly. Not like I was saying goodbye. More like I was doing a final inspection on something I was repossessing. The yard? Hers. I left it. The couch? Mine. Coming with me. The dining table? Joint purchase. But I'd kept the receipt. It was on my card. Tagged. Photographed. Scheduled. I opened the app on my phone. Logged into the smart camera system. All except one had been disabled last night. But I left one active. Mounted discreetly in the bookshelf, facing the living room. Just enough to catch the moment she'd walk through that door and realize the echo she was hearing wasn't the house. It was her voice coming back to her, alone. The camera was synced directly to my phone. Not to record evidence. I didn't need more of that. I just wanted to see the moment it hit her. Cold. Real. Quiet. Some people need fireworks to mark the end of something. I needed her reaction. Everything I touched that morning had a tag or a timestamp. The only thing I didn't touch was her. Her jewelry. Her keepsakes. Her cheap perfume bottles that looked expensive but smelled like lies. I didn't want any of it. This wasn't theft. This was reallocation. The law was on my side, not because I tricked her, but because she never once read the documents she signed. Never once thought I'd use them. Never once imagined the man she thought was safe could also be dangerous, in the most surgical, boring, devastating way. I locked the garage on my way out, stopped in the driveway, and looked back just once. Not for nostalgia. For calibration. I was about to turn our shared life into a sterile stage set. A place where only her footprints remained. And when she came back tonight, she'd walk into that set, expecting applause. But all she'd find was the sound of a man who left nothing behind, except the things she thought he'd never take. At exactly 9:01 a.m., the first truck rolled up the drive. White, unmarked, quiet as a ghost. The second followed 30 seconds later, precision drilled into the operation like a military maneuver. The lead mover stepped out, clipboard in hand, earpiece in place. He didn't greet me, just nodded once. We were past pleasantries. The manifest was 17 pages long. Everything was itemized, photographed, and time-stamped. The boxes were already labeled in storage color codes: blue for den, gray for office, green for garage. It wasn't a move. It was a data extraction. The crew didn't ask questions, didn't crack jokes. They worked like they were being watched, because they were. I had the feed on my phone, watching the single camera in the bookshelf stream every second. Not for insurance. For history. Every item touched had a story. The walnut desk I bought with my first promotion. Mine. The chair she always joked was too ugly to keep in the house. Gone. The bookshelf she filled with decor, but I paid for in cash during a clearance sale. Tagged, wrapped, loaded. Nothing of hers was touched. Not a scarf. Not a shoe. Not a wine glass. Her makeup desk remained like a lonely shrine to delusion. And on her side of the closet, everything intact. I told the crew to leave it exactly as it was, down to the crooked hanger that held her favorite red coat. Not because I cared, but because when she opened that closet door tonight, expecting me to be the one missing, she'd realize she was the ghost. By 10:30 a.m., the garage was cleared. By noon, the main floor was stripped to its bones. The dining table, gone. The couch she hated but I bought before we met, wrapped and loaded like cargo. Only a single chair was left behind, hers. The one she'd claimed as her throne during one of those faux deep wine rants about needing her space. It sat alone in the living room now, a perfect little island of isolation. At 12:33 p.m., I stood in the entryway as the final piece left, the grandfather clock my father gifted us at our wedding. She once said it ticked like guilt. Well, it would tick somewhere else now. The lead mover came back in at 12:44, held out a clipboard, and I signed the digital release. One copy was emailed to me. The other? Printed and folded inside an envelope I placed dead center on the now bare hardwood floor. Then came the final act. I set the envelope down. On top of it, a square white card. Handwritten. No flair. Just clarity. I didn't leave. I just took everything back. Tucked beneath the card was a notarized inventory. Items removed, names on receipts, and legal documentation. The crew snapped a photo of the note on the floor. Timestamped. Verified. 12:45 p.m. The trucks pulled away as quietly as they had arrived. I stood at the top of the stairs for a moment, surveying what remained. It looked like a real estate showing. Generic. Hollow. Like a memory you're trying to forget, but the room still smells like someone else's perfume. The house wasn't destroyed. It was disarmed. I didn't slam the door when I left. I just locked it behind me, knowing damn well the key in her purse wouldn't fit anymore. The sound of her heels clicked once, twice, then stopped dead in the entryway. The door creaked shut behind her, and for the first time since we bought that house, the place answered back with silence. Tessa stood still, keys in hand, purse on her shoulder, grocery bag slipping slightly from her grip. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The noise she expected, TV murmuring, dishwasher humming, a phone charging on the counter, none of it existed anymore. She blinked. The couch? Gone. The dining table where she'd once screamed at me for not living with passion? Gone. The bed frame that she claimed never felt like hers? Gone. Even the mirror in the hallway, the one she checked her hair in every single morning before leaving to run errands in full makeup and heels? Gone. Just one chair remained in the living room, hers. The overpriced beige throne she insisted on ordering from Italy after watching one too many design shows. And even that looked sad now, marooned in a sea of empty hardwood. Then she saw it. Dead center on the floor, like a crime scene clue left behind for effect. A white card, square, familiar handwriting. I didn't leave. I just took everything back. Her bag finally slid from her arm, hitting the floor with a thud. The groceries inside spilled, avocados rolling, a wine bottle knocking sideways but not breaking. She stepped forward slowly, her heels suddenly too loud in the emptiness. Beneath the card, a second sheet of paper, not printed from a home office. Notarized, with the official seal pressed hard into the corner. A full inventory. Labeled. Signed. Timestamped. She skimmed the list, breath catching on every line like they were insults. Couch, purchased July 2013 by Graham H. Receipt attached. Dining set, purchased December 2015 by Graham H. Fully owned. Master bed, purchased March 2017, registered on Graham H.'s card. Guitar collection, gifted to self, no joint ownership claim. Washer/dryer, financed via Graham H. LLC, 100% owned. It kept going. 32 items. And not one that she could claim. Tessa's lips parted again, this time in a low growl. Graham? She moved through the hallway like she expected him to be hiding in a closet, laughing, waiting to explain the prank. Bedroom? Empty. Guest room? Empty. Bathroom? A single hand towel. Nothing else. Her voice cracked louder. Graham. No answer. She ran upstairs, heart now pounding in her throat. But even the home office was gutted. Desk gone. Files gone. Wall shelves bare. Then it hit her. Not what was gone, but how. With no damage. No mess. No forced entry. The house was spotless. Her wine glass from the night before, washed and left on the counter. Her shoes by the door, untouched. Her coat still hanging. He hadn't stormed out. He'd removed himself, like surgery. The front door flew open again as she bolted outside. Looked down the street. Nothing but daylight. No trucks. No Graham. She grabbed her phone from her purse, fingers trembling. Called his number. Straight to voicemail. You've reached Graham. I'm unavailable. And if this is Tessa, don't bother leaving a message. You already said enough. She screamed. Loud. Unfiltered. A banshee howl that echoed through the quiet cul-de-sac. A neighbor's curtain moved. Someone saw her, standing in an empty house that didn't look like hers anymore. And suddenly, for the first time in years, Tessa felt what I'd been feeling for the last decade. Unwanted. Powerless. Unheard. Tessa came back after dark, thinking, foolishly, that maybe she just overreacted. That maybe I'd left for the night in some childish fit of passive-aggressive drama, and the furniture would magically reappear by morning. That the note was just a threat, and she could undo it with a pout and a phone call. The kind of manipulative optimism only someone who's never truly lost thinks they can rely on. But when she stepped onto the porch and tried her key, it didn't even pretend to turn. She jiggled it, pulled it out, tried again. Nothing. She leaned into the door with her shoulder, pressed her cheek against the frame like that would change the mechanics of brass and steel. The deadbolt didn't budge. Her breath quickened, then shortened. She checked her phone. Battery at 14%. 2 bars. She called me. Straight to voicemail. Again. She stood there for a full minute, in heels, in silence, heart pounding in her throat. Then she tried the side door. Also locked. Garage? No luck. Every access point shut, sealed, and scrubbed. The place she once called her castle now treated her like an intruder. And that's when she did the only thing left to someone with no power and too much pride. She called the police. When they arrived, blue lights washing over the driveway, she greeted them like a victim. Spun the story. Her husband had gone off the rails, had taken everything, had locked her out of her own home. The officer, young, polite, but not easily rattled, asked one simple question. Whose name is on the deed? Tessa hesitated. Blinked. Well, it's both of ours, I think. I mean, we bought the place together. Ma'am, I'll need to see documentation. If your name isn't on the deed and he has legal ownership, this isn't a break-in. It's a property dispute. She stared at him like he was speaking another language. But we're married. He nodded. That's a personal relationship. I'm here for legal ones. Then he asked again, do you have any proof of ownership? She pulled out her phone. Scrolled. Nothing. No receipts. No emails. No tax docs. Because she'd never handled that stuff. She thought she was above it. I handled the paperwork. I handled everything. The officer radioed something back to dispatch, waited for confirmation, then turned back to her. According to our system, the title's in the name of Graham H. only. The home was refinanced in 2021 under his LLC. That means you're not the owner. But he's my husband. Yes, ma'am. But this is his property. Unless you have a legal claim, we can't open that door for you. He reached into his jacket and handed her a business card. Not his. A legal contact. Family court and civil asset specialists. You'll need a lawyer. Tessa opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hand holding the card started to tremble. Her voice cracked into a whisper, but this is my house. The officer tilted his head, gave her a look I know well, the kind strangers give to people they don't quite pity, but won't argue with either. He wasn't rude. He wasn't cruel. He was clinical. No, ma'am, he said. Not anymore. A porch light flicked on across the street. The neighbors were watching now. The queen of the cul-de-sac, frozen outside her own door, arguing with reality. She wrapped her arms around herself, shrinking under the weight of her own arrogance, the echo of every time she'd said, "You'll never leave me. You wouldn't last a week on your own." Turns out, I didn't need a week. I just needed one day. The next morning, Tessa walked into the bank wearing her best wronged woman face. Her lipstick perfect, sunglasses hiding the puffiness around her eyes, her voice just the right mix of wounded and indignant. "I need access to our joint account," she said sharply, planting her ID on the counter like she still believed tone equaled entitlement. The teller, young, polite, clearly uncomfortable, clicked through a few tabs, lips tightening as her eyes scanned the screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this account has been locked pending administrative review." Tessa's tone snapped like a whip. "Review by who? I'm his wife." "Yes, but according to this, the account was flagged 3 days ago for structural changes by Graham H." The teller leaned in slightly. "There's a freeze across all linked assets under the marital account group." Tessa blinked, then leaned forward like proximity would change protocol. "There must be a mistake. I need to make a withdrawal. I have groceries to buy." The teller hesitated, then politely excused herself. Tessa watched her disappear behind a door marked manager's office. When she returned, she wasn't alone, and the man beside her didn't have the same gentle tone. "Ma'am, I understand this is frustrating, but our records show that your husband filed restructuring paperwork in compliance with marital asset loss. It appears your name was removed from the accounts before the freeze. Legally, we can't grant you access." She didn't respond, just gathered her purse and stormed out, shoving the glass door so hard it flung wide into a metal trash bin. By noon, she had a list of people to call. Only none of them answered. Not Jenna, who used to meet her for bottomless brunch on Thursdays. Not Kyle, her emergency contact on everything from gym memberships to hotel reservations. Not even that sniveling barista she used to flirt with for free oat milk lattes. Every call rang out. Every message read as delivered, but not one turned blue. Because what she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that I'd been reshaping my social circle long before she threw that wine-slick challenge in my face. Jenna? She was my former coworker's wife. Kyle? I'd covered one too many of his bounce checks back in the day he owed me. As for the barista, I tipped him $100 once to ignore her next 5 visits. I didn't need a PR campaign. I just needed to stop protecting her reputation from itself. That's when she reached into her bag of old tricks and pulled the last one. Family guilt. She called my sister. Put on the voice. The tragic, breathy whimper she used at every holiday to excuse the eye rolls, the passive slaps, the way she'd sigh when I spoke for too long. "Karen," she sniffled. "I don't know what happened. He's shutting me out. I'm scared. I think he's having some kind of breakdown." There was a pause on the line. A long one. And for a second, she thought it worked. Then Karen, my older sister, the one who saw right through the mascara and manipulation from day one, delivered a sentence so sharp it left no oxygen for a rebuttal. "You laughed while burning the bridge," she said. "You just walked away from the smoke." Click. No goodbye. No how dare you. Just an end. And for the first time, Tessa realized something she couldn't bluff her way out of. This wasn't just a man leaving her. This was an entire world closing its door. By Friday evening, the cracks in Tessa's mask weren't just showing, they were spiderwebbing. Her hair wasn't done. The designer blouse she'd thrown on for appearances was creased, wine-stained, and misbuttoned. Her usual smirk had collapsed into a twitchy half-grin she used at checkout counters to feign normalcy. But beneath it all, she was unraveling. She didn't know that while she paced her temporary Airbnb, overpriced, underfurnished, and nothing like her home, an email had already landed in the inbox of her direct supervisor at Branford and King, the marketing firm she'd paraded around for years like a trophy. The subject line, internal alert, potential fund misuse, anonymous concern. Attached, a curated PDF, 41 pages, not just a list, a case file. It included timestamped transactions from the company credit card, 3 dinners labeled client development that had nothing to do with clients and everything to do with lobster risotto, wine pairings, and a man named Blake whose name never appeared in any project logs. Travel reimbursements that magically coincided with her girls' weekends where no receipts had addresses matching the locations she claimed, and a dozen rideshare charges, all beginning or ending at the same high-rise condo complex on the other side of town. Each charge annotated, each line cross-referenced with screenshots, emails, and metadata she never dreamed someone was saving, because she assumed no one cared. But I cared. I just waited. Saturday afternoon, her phone lit up. Call from Brantford and King HQ. She picked up fast, voice low and falsely chipper. "Hey, this is Tessa." Silence for a moment. Then, "Tessa, this is Amelia from compliance. Are you in a place where we can talk?" Her stomach dropped. That tone clinical, practiced, bulletproof. "Of course," Tessa said, faking a laugh. "What's this about?" Amelia didn't laugh back. "We've received documentation alleging misuse of corporate resources. I'm calling to inform you that you've been placed on immediate suspension pending review. Effective now. Do not access your company email. We'll follow up Monday with next steps." "No, wait. What? Are you serious? Who even sent that? This is ridiculous. I haven't." We're not at liberty to discuss the source, but it is thorough and, frankly, detailed beyond what we typically see in internal complaints. You can't just suspend me. I run campaigns here. I'm just the messenger, Tessa. The documentation speaks for itself. Click. She stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, the dial tone humming like a flat line. Then, all at once, she exploded, screaming into the void. A string of rage so vile the Airbnb host would later leave a review mentioning disturbances unsuitable for residential guests. She paced the kitchen, knocking over a stool, hurled a mug into the sink. It shattered like her image of herself. She called Amelia back, straight to voicemail. She texted her team lead. "Please tell me this is a mistake." No answer. She opened Instagram to vent, but realized quickly that no one had commented on her last 4 posts. The one with the designer handbag got 2 likes. Even her new chapter, selfie in the hotel mirror, had been met with digital tumbleweed. Tessa wasn't just being ignored. She was being left behind. And worst of all, somewhere, in a clean, calm room, I was probably sitting with a cup of coffee, watching it all unfold, not with joy, not even with anger, but with that quiet, precise satisfaction that only comes when someone tries to ruin you and ends up ruining themselves. Monday morning didn't start with coffee. It started with dread. Tessa barely slept, if you could call that tossing and pacing sleep. She sat in the half-lit Airbnb kitchenette, biting the corner of her thumbnail, waiting for the email that might save her job. It never came. Instead, her phone rang at 8:12 a.m. Not a number she recognized. Local. Probably HR, she thought, lunging for it like a drowning woman grabbing a branch. "Hello. Hi, is this Tessa Morgan?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "This is Danielle from Westview Property Management. I'm calling in reference to 2 lease applications submitted last week, one under the name Graham Holloway and one under your own." Tessa blinked. "Wait, what?" Danielle continued, cheerful but mechanical. "We wanted to let you know that Mr. Holloway's lease has been approved and finalized. He signed this morning and picked up the keys to Unit 22C, fully furnished, utilities included." Tessa's throat dried up. "But I applied for 22C. "Yes, we saw that. Unfortunately, your application was denied on Friday." No, that can't be right. I make 6 figures. I've been employed there for..." Danielle paused. The kind of pause that means someone's already done the math. "Your employment status is currently listed as pending verification, and your credit score shows 3 recent flags. Additionally, our system indicates a history of co-tenancy with Mr. Holloway, who now holds sole financial responsibility for the previous mortgage account tied to your former residence. That complicates things." Tessa stood up, too fast, nearly knocking over the bar stool. "So you're giving him the place I applied for?" "No, ma'am. He applied before you did, on June 3rd. But I didn't even know I'd need a place on June 3rd. Apparently, he did." Danielle's tone didn't shift. It didn't need to. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just stating facts. But to Tessa, it landed like a sledgehammer. Wait, is there any other unit available? Something smaller." There was. Unit 10B. But it's been taken as of this morning. Silence. Danielle added gently, "If you'd like, I can refer you to one of our partner properties. They're a little farther out, more suburban, but Click. Tessa ended the call and stared at the phone as if it had betrayed her, too. Her reflection caught in the microwave. A woman who used to say things like, "I can have any man, any job, any place I want." Now she couldn't even rent a two-bedroom without getting outplayed. Because Graham hadn't just walked away from the board. He flipped the entire game. She opened her laptop in a panic, pulled up Zillow, Craigslist, even Facebook Marketplace. Every listing that looked halfway livable was either pending or required verified income. The irony tasted sour. Just last month, she was bragging to her friends about how money always finds her. Now she was looking at shared basement suites in neighborhoods she used to sneer at on the drive-thru. That was when it clicked. This wasn't just divorce. This was surgical exile. The man she mocked, dismissed, emasculated, he didn't just survive. He anticipated. He left her every illusion until it was too late to fix them. Then, without touching her once, he rearranged the entire world so she had nowhere left to land. And the worst part? There was no one to call. Because the only person who would have helped her was already unpacking in Unit 22C. The moment the app notification buzzed on my phone, I set down my coffee and opened the stream. It was time. The camera feed flickered for half a second, then stabilized, centered on the living room. That single chair. The note. The cold glow of morning sunlight bleeding through the curtains. And then there she was. Tessa stepped through the door like she still believed the world bent to her. Her heels clicked against the bare floor. Her eyes scanned left, then right. Her face cracked in real time. It was magnificent. The first flicker of confusion. The disbelief. Then the realization that this wasn't a prank, a mistake, or a threat. It was a decision. Her head jerked toward the bedroom. Then the kitchen. She turned in circles, pacing fast. Mouth moving like she was talking to someone, but no one was there. Just the echo of her own disbelief. She dropped her purse, flailed toward the dining room like she could summon the table back into existence. Then she saw it. The note. Centered. Waiting. She bent down slowly, lips moving as she read it. I didn't leave. I just took everything back. She stayed crouched for a moment longer than necessary, eyes frozen to the floor like she was trying to stop the room from spinning. Then she picked it up, hands trembling, and flipped through the attached documentation. You could almost see the math clicking into place. The receipts. The names. The cold trail of her own negligence woven together into a net. She stumbled back into the chair. That single throne she once insisted I hated. Now, it looked like a punishment. A spotlight. A joke so sharp it drew blood. I paused the feed there. Not because I didn't want to watch the rest, but because that was the exact moment I'd been waiting for. The moment a person stops fighting and starts remembering. Remembering every arrogant laugh. Every time she called me predictable. Every time she whispered lies into the phone thinking I was too dull to notice. She thought the quiet ones were safe. No, we're just accurate. I tapped open my messages. Opened our old thread. Still unblocked, of course. She always thought I'd come crawling back. That's how she worked. Humiliation today, guilt tomorrow, apology by Thursday. But this time, I didn't send a monologue. No rant. No demands. Just 8 words. You bet on my weakness. I bet right back. Delivered. Read. Seen. And then, silence. She didn't reply. What could she say? There was no angle left to spin, no fake tears to weaponize, no audience to perform for. Even the house itself had expelled her. I watched the read receipt sit there. The 3 dots never came. Later that night, I deleted the camera feed. Wiped the storage. The story was complete. Not because I needed closure, but because I didn't need her version of it polluting mine. Some people burn bridges out of spite. I dismantled mine plank by plank, reused the wood, and built a home where her name was never even written in the foundation. She didn't just lose the house, or the job, or the social circle. She lost her place in the story. And I walked out with the one thing she never expected me to claim. Control. The suitcase was blue. Not new, not old, just worn enough to remind Thomas it had history. Their history. It was the same one they'd taken to New Orleans for their 10th anniversary. He remembered how she used to overpack and pretend it was his fault. Now, she folded sweaters into it with the precision of someone exiting a role she'd rehearsed too many times. No tears. No pause. Just mechanical movements, like she was clocking out. I'm leaving, she said, turning to face him. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse, final. He's the man I really love. Thomas had imagined this moment, in nightmares mostly. But in those dreams, he screamed. He begged. He shattered something. Not now. Not in real life. Here, he just breathed out through his nose, walked to the TV, picked up the remote, and said, "Before you go, watch this." She tilted her head. "What? You think this is going to change my mind?" There was a flicker of nerves beneath the arrogance. But she stayed by the door, hand still on the handle of her suitcase, like she'd practiced this posture. Thomas clicked play. The screen flickered. And there it was. A grainy image of her silver Camry parked outside the Garden Pines Motel. The date was just 3 weeks ago. The camera was angled high, like from a nearby utility pole. She blinked, adjusted her grip on the suitcase. That's not what you think." No reply. Only silence and the hum of the TV. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. The next clip loaded. Her stepping out of the car, sunglasses on, hair tied up like she always did when she didn't want to be noticed. A man opened the motel door before she knocked. He pulled her in by the waist. Thomas watched her face, not the screen. That's where the real movie was playing. The poker face cracked. Her mouth parted, but no words came. She blinked again, fast. "Is this what you've been doing instead of working?" She spat, reaching for anything she could weaponize. "Spying on me? This is sick, Thomas. You're losing it." "No," he said. "I lost you. Years ago. I just didn't want to admit it." Her lip trembled, but not from guilt, from panic, because the next clip hadn't even started yet, and she didn't know how much worse it could get. Before we go deeper, if you're listening this and you're one of the 98% who haven't subscribed yet, help me hit my first 10,000 subscribers. It means the world to me and the team behind these stories. It genuinely keeps us going. Back in the room, the woman he once married looked like she was calculating fast. "I never meant to hurt you," she tried. Things changed. "You changed. You work all the time. You barely talk to me anymore." Thomas said nothing. His finger hovered over the pause button, but he didn't press it. "Let it play. Let it all play. I'm not the bad guy here," she muttered. "You just don't listen. You never see me." He smiled, but it wasn't kind. "I see you now." On the screen, she was laughing in room 106, barefoot, wine glass in hand, twirling the chain of her necklace. The one Thomas gave her on their 15th anniversary. That was when she dropped the suitcase. Not a dramatic toss, just a slow release, like her hand had gone numb. She looked at the TV, then at him, then at the door. She had grease on her knuckles and a permanent knot in her back when they first met, just 23, working double shifts at a crumbling roadside diner. Her mom had lung cancer and an eviction notice stapled to the front door. That's what Thomas walked into chaos disguised as a brave face. He was just a customer at first. Quiet, tired, kind. He tipped too much, asked too little. But he noticed when she stopped wearing makeup, when her shoes started coming apart at the seams. One night, after closing, he handed her an envelope. It wasn't a grand gesture, just enough to cover 2 months of rent. No note, just the unspoken truth. "You're not alone." That was the beginning. He didn't sweep her off her feet. He held them steady when the floor kept shifting. When she cried after her mother died, it was into the sleeves of his work shirt. When she said, "I can't do this anymore," he said, "then let me carry it a while." And he did. Quietly, tirelessly, paid for night school, stayed up proofreading her essays while his knees ached from 10-hour shifts. He taught himself to cook, to fix the pipes, to patch drywall. She once called him a one-man repair crew with no ego. He wore that like a badge. On their wedding day, her dress was secondhand and 2 sizes too big. Her vows, however, were laser-sharp. "You saved my life," she said, eyes wet. And I'll never forget it. But she did forget. Not all at once. It wasn't like a switch flipped. It was slower, crueler. Somewhere between the new job and the new car. Somewhere between her first promotion and her 3rd wardrobe overhaul. Thomas stopped recognizing her. He'd be scrubbing mildew off the back porch while she was at team-building retreats. She'd come home with stories of the guys from marketing and wine tastings he was never invited to. When he asked why, she said, "It's just not your scene, babe." Said with a pat on the shoulder like he was some tired dog. She started calling him reliable with that passive-aggressive twinkle in her voice. "You're just so dependable," she'd say, half laughing. "Too dependable to be exciting." He laughed with her the first few times. Then he didn't. The truth started bleeding through in moments too mundane to notice at first. She kept her phone face down. She started sleeping with earplugs, said his breathing was too loud. Once, she came home with a bruise on her shoulder. I banged into a filing cabinet, she muttered, not looking him in the eye. Then there was the Christmas she forgot to buy him anything, saying, "We agreed not to do gifts this year, remember?" He hadn't. And yet, he stayed. Until 3 months ago. Thomas had been sorting through receipts for taxes when he noticed something off. A bank statement tucked between pages of a gardening catalog, strange in itself, because she never read those. And there it was, a $412 charge from a boutique hotel in the next town over. Her name. Her card. He brought it up that night. Softly. Casually. "You go to Ridgewood last week?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, yeah. Girls' spa weekend. We got a deal. Liz handled the booking. I just paid for part." Thomas nodded. Let it go. But the word spa stuck in his teeth like a splinter. So he checked. The Ridgewood Inn wasn't a spa. It was a romantic getaway with canopy beds and wine service. No mention of massages. No yoga classes. Just fireplaces and private jacuzzis. He called. Asked about the reservation. Said he was thinking of booking the same room. The clerk hesitated, then read off. 2 guests, 1 king bed. Booked by and said her name. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't confront her either. Just sat in the garage with a beer and an old photo album. One photo stood out. Her graduation. She was beaming. He was behind her, arms around her waist, sunburned and proud. He'd paid for that cap and gown. He'd paid for everything. And now he was paying attention. It could have ended with the lie. She could have said girls' spa day, and he could have forced himself to believe it. Could have swallowed that acid down like he'd done 100 times before. But something in her voice, it was too clean, too ready. And liars always sound most sincere when they've already rehearsed it in their heads a dozen times. Thomas didn't say a word that night. Just nodded. Kissed her on the forehead. But something flicked on inside him like an old breaker switch he thought he'd disconnected years ago. The next morning, he bought a motion sensor camera online. 2-day shipping. He told her it was for raccoons digging up the flower beds. She laughed and said, "Your paranoia is getting creative." Then she scrolled her phone and barely looked up. He mounted the tiny black box behind the trellis near the driveway, wired it into the garage outlet and synced it to his tablet. A silent sentry. No blinking light. No hum. Just an all-seeing eye staring out at the world she thought he wasn't watching. The first week, it recorded squirrels, rain, wind, a neighbor's cat. The second week, she left every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 6:50 p.m. She always said she was meeting Kara for wine. She always wore lipstick and spritzed perfume. Never came back before midnight. Thomas made coffee during those hours. Cleaned the workshop. Sometimes just sat in the dark, watching the footage stream live from his tablet. It became a ritual. But he didn't want confirmation. Not yet. A part of him still whispered, maybe it really is wine with Kara. But then came the Wednesday slip-up. She said she was working late, big project, no dinner. He said, no problem. Ordered takeout. Sat in the garage again, sipping soup from a paper container. At 7:03, the motion camera blinked. She left in flats and a long coat. Same spritz of perfume. No big project. Thomas leaned in. At 7:18, headlights appeared. Not in the driveway, too obvious. Just across the street, tucked behind the Myers hedges. He stepped closer to the screen. Adjusted the contrast. The vehicle was a silver crossover. Not luxury, but clean. Familiar. The man stepped out, baseball cap low, sunglasses on. At night. And that's when it hit him. Not the car. Not the sneaking around. The walk. He recognized the man's walk. That stiff, upright, overconfident gait. Like his spine had something to prove. He'd seen it before. In a church basement, 5 years ago. His old colleague, Mark, stood by the casket when Susan from HR passed away. Everyone came to say their piece. Mark said something inappropriate about her finally being at peace from quarterly reports, and Thomas had wanted to punch him. Mark. That Mark. Divorced twice. Used to brag about emotional intelligence and how women love a man who reads young. That's who was waiting across the street for Thomas's wife. He watched her jog to the car like a teenager sneaking out of prom. She kissed Mark as soon as she slid into the passenger seat. Thomas didn't flinch. Didn't scream. Just rewound the footage. Watched it again. Then he copied the file and created a folder on his laptop. He labeled it, Maybes. Over the next 2 weeks, that folder grew. More drives. More late-night drop-offs. Mark never pulled into the driveway. Always parked across the street or around the corner like he knew better. Like this wasn't his first time screwing another man's wife. Thomas began cataloging timestamps. Made a spreadsheet. Recorded perfume usage, lipstick shades, durations away from the house. Not because he didn't believe her anymore, but because he wanted to understand the depth of the betrayal. And something even darker. How long had this been going on? One clip stood out. She came home drunk, alone. Sat on the porch swing. She didn't see the camera watching. She took off her shoes, leaned her head back, and whispered, "God, I wish he'd just leave me." She didn't say who, but it didn't matter, because Thomas was already past the point of asking why. Now, he was figuring out how. Thomas became quiet in a way that made the house feel colder. He still kissed her goodbye each morning. Still made 2 cups of coffee. Still fixed the dripping bathroom faucet without being asked. But the warmth was gone, not absent, just measured. And she didn't notice. Or maybe she noticed and thought it was just age, stress, routine. Maybe she convinced herself he was too dull to burn anymore. But he wasn't dull. He was deliberate. He started backing up every file from his camera. Duplicated drives. Stored one at his brother's place under the pretense of a digital photo project. When she was in the shower, he ran file recovery tools on the family laptop. Found old screenshots, flirty emails with the name M, and references to weekends that actually feel like living. He went to the garage and flipped open an old binder of tax records. Found a copy of the house deed. Still had both their names on it. That night, he stayed up reading property law on forums until his eyes went red. Next day, he visited a lawyer. Not a flashy one. No marble floors or secretaries with polite smiles. Just an old friend of a friend. The kind of guy who didn't care about your pain, just your paper trail. "Can I evict a spouse based on infidelity?" Thomas asked plainly. The lawyer blinked. Infidelity's not a legal reason unless you've got documentation, and even then, depends on the state. What are we talking about here? Thomas laid out a drive on the desk. Video, timestamps, audio, messages. Working on more. The lawyer whistled. "You a cop?" Thomas shook his head. "Warehouse manager." The man leaned back. "You're about to be a very organized divorce." Over the next 8 weeks, Thomas built something that looked, from the outside, like a return to routine. He still grilled steak on Saturdays. Still showed up for his shift, still brought donuts for the young guys. But inside, a different Thomas was in motion. He started using her laptop when she wasn't home. She didn't clear her browser history. She never thought he'd look. He screen captured a message she typed and never sent. He says we should just rip the Band-Aid off. I'm scared T will take it badly. I know he'll be heartbroken, but I can't live this lie anymore. He was pushing her to confess. That meant they were close. Good. Thomas didn't want to stop her. He wanted her to walk herself right into it. He updated his will. Removed her name. Added 2 charities she hated. One she mocked for wasting money on lost causes. He sold off some mutual investments they'd held together. Cashed out discreetly, funneling money into an account she didn't know about. He created an entire paper trail for his future life, a life she wouldn't be part of. In the motel. He booked it 2 days before her departure date. Same room number. Same clerk. He brought a small duffel bag, just to keep up appearances. When the woman at the desk asked if he'd stayed before, he smiled and said, "Not yet. But I hear it's got good views." Inside the room, he stood still for a long time. The bed had fresh sheets. There was a wine stain on the carpet she probably never noticed. He took a picture of himself at the desk with his coffee. Another standing by the window, fully clothed, looking casual. When he got home, he placed those photos in a folder labeled insurance. He wasn't sure if he'd ever need them. But then again, neither was she. Thomas had no interest in explosive confrontations. No shouting matches. No slaps or slammed doors. That's what she expected. What he wanted was a documented truth. One no one could twist, gaslight, or talk their way out of. He didn't want revenge. He wanted recorded peace. The motel stank of bleach and desperation. Thomas walked into the front office wearing his oldest polo shirt and the demeanor of a man who just wanted to mind his own business. The manager, a pudgy guy in his 60s with nicotine-stained fingers and a comb-over that had given up years ago, sat behind a battered desk watching a game show on mute. A bell dinged above the door as Thomas entered, and the man looked up like it hurt. "Can I help you?" he grunted, eyeing Thomas's posture, which radiated middle-class patience and barely contained calculation. "I stayed here a few weeks ago," Thomas said casually. "Thought it was fine. Might book it again for next month. But, had a little situation with my car in the lot. Think someone bumped it." The manager blinked. "That's not really my problem, sir." "I get that. Was just wondering if I could review any of your outdoor camera footage. Just to be sure. Cameras don't work. Been busted for months." He leaned back and scratched his jaw. Thomas nodded, like that made perfect sense. "That's a shame. Liability-wise, I mean." The manager's eyes narrowed, but not with suspicion, more like the recognition of an approaching hassle. Thomas waited, then pulled a brochure from his pocket. "I install security systems. Small setups. Real quiet. Maybe I could offer something mutually beneficial." The guy smirked. "You offering to upgrade our cameras just to check your bumper?" Thomas smiled back. "Let's say I'm just a generous man who doesn't like loose ends." On his next visit, Thomas arrived with two things: a tiny metal case of brand-new motion cameras and 2 bottles of mid-shelf bourbon wrapped in a brown paper bag. The manager chuckled when he saw them. "You're serious," he said, teeth yellow. "Always," Thomas replied, handing him the drinks. He spent the afternoon quietly swapping the rusted cams for sleeker ones. At the end, he asked one more favor. "About a flash drive," he said, slipping it across the desk. "You got access to the backups? Would love to compare some angles." The man eyed him, shrugged, and stuck it in the port. Thomas left an hour later with over 90 days of footage. At home, he didn't rush. He poured himself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and began to scrub. The timestamps helped. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Always around 7:10 p.m. The first time she appeared, she was in a denim jacket and heels he didn't recognize. She stepped out of her car, hair pinned up, phone in hand. Smiling. That smile hurt more than any slap ever could. Then Mark appeared. Casual. Confident. Smug. They hugged like they lived in each other's arms. She leaned into him. Whispered something that made them both laugh. Thomas paused the frame. Zoomed in. His name was on the phone screen, an incoming call. She looked at it. Stared at it for a beat. Then declined it. Then she kissed Mark. He didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He rewound that 5-second moment. Watched it again. And again. The ignored call. The smirk. The kiss. He exported that clip separately and named it Priority. The next few recordings followed the same rhythm. Arrive, glance around, slip inside. Always room 106. Always Mark. One clip showed her walking barefoot to the vending machine, laughing, as Mark followed behind with a towel over his shoulder. She wore a shirt. She waved to the manager. They didn't even try to hide it. Thomas looped that scene too. But it was the voicemail that gutted him. She stood in the parking lot, phone in hand, recording a message for a friend. The mic picked it up through her phone speaker. She said, "No, I'm not telling him yet. He's harmless. I mean, he's sweet. But come on, you ever met a guy so boring he folds grocery bags? Mark's the opposite. He makes me feel like I'm alive again." Alive. Thomas sat in silence for a long time. Then he stood up, opened the drawer where he kept the flash drive backups, labeled a new one, the confession. He didn't slam anything, didn't cry. He just prepared. Because now the truth wasn't some abstract feeling. It was footage. It was timeline. It was proof. And it would be the news she tied herself. She moved through the house like she was starring in her own play. Mornings started with coffee, his mug always waiting, just the way he liked it, as if the poison of her betrayal could be diluted by routine. She packed his lunch on Wednesday, tucked a sticky note inside with a heart drawn in red ink. "You work too much," she whispered as he slid on his jacket, pressing a kiss to his cheek like a woman in love. She smelled like lavender. Not the brand she used to wear. This one was new. Younger. Thomas kissed her back. Smiled. She didn't notice the tension behind his eyes. She never had. That week, she made her favorite meals, played music in the kitchen, danced barefoot on the tile. When he asked how her day was, she'd say productive or nothing much, like nothing was bubbling under the surface. But Thomas? He wasn't living in their house anymore. He was observing it. She floated through their world as if she was untouchable, like the universe was finally bending in her direction. Her phone stayed glued to her side, face down, even in the shower. Once, he walked in as she quickly slid it under a towel and said, "Don't you knock anymore?" with a smirk. He just apologized. Quietly. Every interaction was a thread in the rope she didn't know she was wrapping around herself. Friday came. The pivot point. That morning, she hummed while scrambling eggs. "I've got dinner with Kara tonight," she said. "Girls' night. I might be late, so don't wait up." Thomas sipped his coffee. "Tell her I said hi." She paused, just for a second, before replying, "Sure thing." At 6:48 p.m., she walked out the door in a flowy dress and heels she hadn't worn in years. At 6:52, Thomas backed out of the garage and drove east, away from where she said she was going. He'd traced the route 3 times already. Knew which alley gave the clearest view of Mark's building. Knew which car was hers and which one was Mark's gray SUV. Knew the angle he needed to watch the front stoop without being seen. At 7:11 p.m., she pulled up. No hesitation. She grabbed a tote bag from the passenger seat, walked up to Mark's door, and here was the detail that twisted the knife. She used a key. Her own. She didn't even knock. Just slipped inside like she belonged there. Thomas didn't flinch. He sat with the engine off, hands folded in his lap. The glow of the dashboard flickered across his face. He waited. 60 minutes. Not because he needed to see more, but because waiting was the ritual now. The slow-burning edge that kept him sharp. At 8:24 p.m., he drove to the post office. He mailed a small padded envelope, no return address, to himself. Inside was the flash drive. Not the original. One of the backups. Labeled in permanent marker. Final proof. It contained everything. Footage, timestamps, text captures, the voicemail where she called him a walking pension. He walked out of the post office with steady steps. When he pulled into their driveway at 8:52, the lights were already on. She was home, back in the kitchen, wearing an apron like the betrayal never happened, like dinner was the bomb that healed everything. There was music playing, something jazzy and light. Garlic in the air, red wine breathing on the counter. "Oh, you're back early," she said, surprised. Thomas stepped inside, hung his keys, and walked to her. He kissed her forehead. She looked up, blinking. What was that for? He smiled, slow and clean. "Let's talk tomorrow." The suitcase stood by the door again. Same one. Same creased sides, like it knew it had no business being there but had shown up anyway out of obligation. The zipper was open, half-packed, as if she wanted to perform the leaving rather than actually do it. She stood in the hallway wearing a white sundress she hadn't touched in years. No makeup, but red lipstick. Always red when she wanted control of the narrative. Thomas sat at the kitchen table, tying his shoes like he had all the time in the world. She hovered, waiting for him to look up first. "I've been thinking for a long time," she began, voice feathered with artificial sadness. "About us." He nodded, stood slowly. She continued. "He's the one I laugh with. The one who listens. You're safe, Thomas. You always have been. But I can't pretend anymore." He walked past her without speaking. "Thomas," she added, a bit firmer, "I need you to understand. This isn't some affair. This is real." He offered flatly, eyes still scanning the TV remote. She blinked. Yes, exactly. He sees me." Thomas finally looked up. "Well, before you go be seen," he said, "there's one thing I want you to watch." She rolled her eyes. "You don't have to try and stop me." He didn't say a word, just turned on the TV. The screen buzzed to life. A flicker. Then a frozen frame. Her car, parked at the Garden Pines Motel, timestamped 7:14 p.m. The angle was wide and unmistakable, zoomed in just enough to show the rear bumper and the necklace she always wore glinting as she stepped out. She froze mid-step. "What is this?" He said nothing. The next clip rolled, her entering the motel room, laughing. Mark behind her, his hand on her hip. "I can explain," she started. Thomas raised a finger without looking at her. Just one finger. Not to silence her, just to say, "Not yet." The third clip loaded. This one, she was on the phone outside, pacing. A voicemail to a friend. "No, he doesn't suspect a thing. Honestly, I think he'd rather not know. He's so dull, he's probably grateful I'm out of the house once in a while." Her voice cracked on the recording from laughter. Not guilt. Laughter. The color drained from her face. Thomas, stop please. This isn't the whole story. Another clip. This time inside Mark's kitchen. Her back to the camera, his arms wrapped around her waist. They were toasting. Soon, she said. I'll tell him soon. I want this house. I want the clean break. I deserve it. Mark, he'll fold. Guys like him always do. She dropped onto the couch. No dignity left. Legs trembling. Hands pressed to her lips. Her suitcase stood next to her like it wanted to leave without her. I didn't mean all of that, she choked. It was just talking. You know how people talk. He muted the screen, turned toward her. Not angry. Not smug. Cold. Did you pack the charger? He asked softly. You always forget the charger. She looked up, shaking. Thomas, please, just let me explain. It wasn't like that. He walked to the hall closet, pulled out the charger, and tossed it onto the suitcase. You'll need it where you're going. Then he picked up the remote again and clicked next. The screen played on, relentless. Frame by frame, her second life unraveled, each clip a scalpel peeling away whatever mask she thought she was still wearing. There she was, unlocking the door to room 106. Again, a different day, different outfit, but the same key, the same practiced smile. She stepped inside and turned to kiss him before the door had even closed. No hesitation. Like it was home. No, she whispered, standing in front of the TV now, hand over her mouth. Thomas, you shouldn't have. That's a violation. He didn't move. Didn't blink. The next clip cued. Her entering Mark's townhouse with grocery bags. She tossed her purse on the counter and pulled out a bottle of wine with practiced ease, like she'd done it 100 times before. A dog barked in the background, his dog. She bent down to pet it like she belonged there too. Thomas turned the volume up. Her voice came through a speakerphone. He's harmless, Mark. He folds his underwear. I swear, he'd rather organize a tool cabinet than have sex. The man is beige. Mark laughed. She added, but his pension's solid. Once we've got the house, we're set. Thomas looked at her. She was pale now, trembling. I didn't mean that, she said, eyes wide, desperate. It was a stupid joke. I was venting. People say things they don't mean. But the video didn't stop. Next clip, them in bed, tangled sheets. Her phone screen visible. A text chain between her and Kara. Thomas had zoomed in, enhanced, frame by frame. Almost done pretending. I feel like a parasite. Kara, you're not. He's just an investment. It's called ROI. Her reply, ROI with a plumbing license. At that, Thomas finally looked away from the TV. She stood frozen. And then the bag slipped from her hand. A soft, pathetic thud on the floor. Like the air had finally told the truth she was too proud to admit. She dropped next, to her knees. Like gravity had remembered her. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back. No anger, just a blank, unbearable stillness. Thomas, she said, voice cracking. I didn't mean any of it. I was scared. I got caught up in something stupid. Please, let's just talk. We can fix this. He moved toward the door. She crawled after him. Please, I was wrong, okay? I made a mistake. We've been through too much. Don't let this be the thing that ends it. I didn't even know how to stop it. He reached for the doorknob. She sobbed now, hands clutching at his pant leg. You're a good man, Thomas. You've always been a good man. He paused, turned his head slightly, and said in a voice colder than she'd ever heard. No, I was a blind man. Then he opened the door and stepped out. She screamed after him, not words, just a raw, feral sound, the kind people make when their stories collapse and there's nothing left to hide behind. The door clicked shut behind him. The screen still played. But there was no one left in the room willing to watch. She didn't care about the neighbors anymore. Not when she was on the floor, clinging to his leg like a woman stripped of every illusion she thought she could control. Mascara smudged from nothing, she hadn't even worn any. It was just the wreckage of her pride melting down in real time. She wasn't crying out of heartbreak. She was crying because she lost the script. Please, Thomas, she choked. I was scared. I was stupid. I didn't know how to leave. I didn't want to hurt you. He turned back toward her. And for a moment, her face lit up. Hope. Idiot hope. As if this was the part where he'd get soft, kneel down, say something like, "Let's go to therapy." But Thomas didn't kneel. He didn't even blink. "You didn't lie because you were scared," he said, voice calm, measured, final. "You lied because it worked." She froze. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, thick, sealed, unbothered, dropped it beside her on the floor. She stared at it like it might explode. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. The first page was simple enough: divorce petition. His signature already at the bottom. Attached to it was a single yellow sticky note in his handwriting. "This footage has not been shared, but if needed, it will be." Her breath hitched. "You can't." He didn't reply. "Thomas, I'll lose everything." Her voice cracked into something less human. Not rage. Not grief. Fear. The cold kind. The kind she never expected to feel with him. He stepped toward the threshold. Stopped just long enough to say without turning his head, "Then you'll finally know what I gave you." The door opened. Daylight poured in. She didn't chase him this time. She didn't scream. She just stayed there, crumpled on the hardwood, holding a document that told her the story wasn't hers anymore. Thomas walked out into the sun, past the garden he'd planted alone, past the mailbox he'd painted after she said it made them look low income. He didn't look back. The gate closed behind him with a click. Not dramatic. Just final. The house was still. Not the stillness of grief. Not the aching void of loneliness. No, this was the stillness of clarity. Of air cleared by fire. Thomas sat in his chair. Same worn recliner. Same chipped mug in hand. The taste of burnt coffee grounding him to something real. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. The TV set black now. Powered off. The drive with all the footage was still in his desk drawer. Untouched since morning. But that night, as the sky outside softened into that dull blue of late dusk, Thomas did one more thing. He logged into his cloud backup. There, hidden among the hundreds of folders labeled with dry, practical names, taxes_2021, home repair_receipts, cam footage_sorted, was one marked only as for me. He opened it. Inside, a single video file. Timestamped 13 months ago. She had been working from home that week. Back-to-back Zooms, she'd said, annoyed that he dared ask what was for dinner. She didn't know her mic had stayed live after one of the calls. Thomas had heard it then, faintly, through the walls. He hadn't asked. Just checked the webcam logs later that night and downloaded what the app auto-recorded. He clicked play. Her voice filled the quiet again, but different this time. Unfiltered. Raw. Less guarded than any lie she'd ever spoken to his face. "He's just dull, you know," she said, probably sprawled on the couch in that bathrobe she only wore when she was hungover or smug. "I mean, he's sweet. Predictable. Like a dog you don't really notice until someone asks, 'Hey, is that thing still alive?'" Laughter from the other end. "Marks. So why stay?" She sighed. "Because he won't do anything. He's just a quiet man. He'll stew, maybe. Write a note. Cry in the garage. But he won't fight. Not for me. Not for himself. Not ever." Thomas paused the playback. Watched her frozen frame on the screen, mid-sentence, a ghost now. And then, without flinching, without ceremony, he selected the entire archive. Every drive folder. Every clip. Every enhanced screenshot. Every backup. Every contingency plan. And hit delete. Confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure? This cannot be undone." He clicked yes. Gone. She wanted a reaction. Wanted to feel powerful through his pain. But Thomas had outgrown reactions. He didn't need court battles. He didn't need neighbors whispering. He didn't even need her shame anymore. He had dignity. And that was louder than any revenge. He took a sip of his coffee, leaned back, and exhaled. No smile. No rage. Just the weight of peace settling into his bones. Then he whispered, to no one and to everyone, "I may be quiet, but I'm never blind."